Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. In accordance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, be advised that a notice of this meeting was made by posting on the bulletin board, town hall, and mailing to the officially designated newspapers list of the meeting dates annually, indicating that this meeting would take place at Town Hall at 7 p.m. on June 17th.
Joseph Caulfield.
Here.
Chandra Rajani.
Here.
Amy Lawrence.
Here.
Gary Rosen.
Here.
Priscilla Sarah.
Here.
Jojane Peng.
Here.
Vice Chairman Jessica Black.
Here.
Chairman Craig Butler.
Here. So we have a couple minutes of memorializations to go through, but I want to go over the agenda real quick, and then we'll go back just in case anyone needs to organize anything. We're going to juggle the agenda from what you see here. Okay, agenda is up front here if anyone wants it. First case right here tonight is calendar 398424, 57 Thackeray Drive. Second case is going to be 28 Farbrook Drive, calendar 399024. Then we're going to proceed to calendar 3994, 24 St. Rose. And then lastly, we'll be hearing the case from Mill Playhouse at 398724. Okay? So with that, we'll move to approval of the minutes of 5/6/24. Any changes or corrections? If none, can I have a motion? Motion to approve. And a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Okay, next up, the memorializations, 2 of them, calendar 387022. Adriana and Devjit Banerjee at 100 Newbrook Road in Millburn. That's actually, yeah, sure. Any corrections or changes to that memorialization? Who's eligible on that?
Eligible are Joseph, Chandra, Amy, Gary, Jessica Craig.
If no changes or corrections, can I have a motion to adopt that memorialization?
Move approval calendar 3870.
And a second?
Second.
Joseph Caulfield.
Yes.
Chandra Rajani.
Yes.
Amy Lawrence.
Yes.
Gary Rosen.
Yes.
Jessica Black.
Yes.
Craig Butler.
Yes, that's memorialization, that's actually extension, right?
Yes.
That was on the extension.
Oh, that was good.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
Do you want to change that to Short Hills? Should we change it?
I mean, it is,
It
I
should be
mean,
Short Hills.
okay, well, municipal, lower
I'll
township,
just-
but.
okay.
Okay, and next up, we have calendar 398524, Ross and Rachel Cooperman at 92-98 Hartshorn Drive. Short Hills, any changes or corrections to that memorialization? Same
Same people.
group, if they have a motion.
Motion to approve calendar 3985.
Take it for the second.
Second.
Second on Chandra.
Joseph Caulfield.
Yes.
Chandra Rajani.
Yes.
Amy Lawrence.
Yes.
Gary Rosen.
Yes.
Jessica Black.
Yes.
Craig Butler.
Yes. First application, 398424. Gurran and Nidhi Rastogi, 57 Thackeray. Come on down. So all of you be speaking this evening?
Sorry?
Will you be speaking this evening?
Yeah, both of us at least are, and then we have Scott, who's our engineer, and then we have Derek, and then we have our neighbor as well.
Okay, so at this point, let's have the three of you sworn in.
Yeah, sure.
Just raise your right hand. He's gonna be.
And you as well, you're speaking, correct?
Just raise your right hand. Please, you swear from testimony about to give in tonight's proceeding to be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Yes.
Your names for the record.
Varun Rastogi.
Nadine Rastogi.
Scott Lynn, DS Engineer.
Scott,
Lynn, L-Y-N-N, DS Engineer.
thank you.
Please proceed.
Sure. This is regarding the pool that we want to construct. I just want to lay out the reason, first of all, why we want to have the pool at the house. So we are all in the family big water lovers. Everybody is big water body, loves to swim. Even in winter vacations, we are looking not for skiing, but warm places where the kids can get into the pool, and that's what they love to do. So just putting it out there that, there's a big love of water. That's why we thought of adding a pool now to the house. Secondly, both the kids, we have a daughter who's 13-year-old. Our son is 19-year-old. They're both part of a swim team. They both swim competitively, and throughout the year, our daughter is with Scarlet swim team. So we thought it'll be a good addition, and along with her swim team, she'll have some place to do practice her skills as well as enjoy the pool. Secondly, our son, now he's gone to college, he's at NYU, so he's very close. So the proximity of him coming at the house is, he's a lot more at the house. And secondly, sometime back, he developed activity-induced asthma, which we learned from our doctor was majorly because of the chlorine in the water. So having a salt water pool at the house, we thought, again, it'll help him, or at least, the love of water or the swimming that he's been doing so much for the years, he can continue doing at the home in a very safe and healthy environment. Just wanted to put it out there.
Yeah, and look, I think end of the day, our daughter swims a lot, and knock on the wood, last thing you want to see is chlorine kind of having an issue for her. So we want the pool so that she can take the labs. One thing I'll mention to the committee, or a couple of things. We did not come up with a plan just for the sake of coming up with a plan. Like we gave it a lot of thought. We spent a lot of time trying to minimize as much as we can. And some of the key drivers that we thought of were, look, we needed at least some amount of pool where our kids can take a lap and do their flip turns and stuff like that. So like, if you see, we have a 970 square feet pool, which is the bare minimum. We made it in a form of a L so that at least we can maximize the space that is available to us. The other thing I'll say is, in order to get the pool in place, we have a wraparound deck around in our family room. We have 3 sliding doors, and all of them lead into that wraparound deck. In order to reduce the size of everything, we are now going to do away with the deck in front of one of the sliding doors. So we have to convert it into a window so that at least we can reduce the space and we are not taking too much of like impervious space. The other thing I'll say is the way we have defined the deck and the patio space of the pool, we have tried to do one over the other so that we are utilizing the deck and the patio space in a way that we are not like doubling it up, like we are not creating redundancies. We are trying to minimize the area where we can. Now, when you come and think about the pool patio space, we have, as I'm sure you guys are seeing it in the maps, we are trying to reduce the size of the pool patio wherever we can. We have to keep at least some space so that we can service the pool. And we have family and friends who have young kids who come in. You don't want the soil to be around the pool where people slip. So we have just kept wherever minimum we can so that at least we are trying to be respectful of committee's time and the rules and regulations of the township. And look, I think I'm sure Scott can go into, like, we have tried to create dry wells so that we can at least do the stormwater management as well so that it is not impactful to our neighbors. So I think end of the day, this is our way of trying to find an optimal solution that works for the committee and works for us while we are able to provide our kids a little bit of, a leeway to ability to swim and enjoy their, whatever time they have with us.
Thank you. Who's up next?
Just to add a little, thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Yeah, keep your voice
Well,
up.
Let's get you qualified, so why don't you provide your credentials?
Yes, Scott Lynn, I'm a civil engineer in the state of New Jersey with 35 years experience. Although I have not appeared before this board in the past, I have appeared before many other boards in the state of New Jersey.
And your license?
Correct.
And license is still in good standing?
Correct.
Thanks, your credentials are accepted by this board, please proceed.
So just to add a little bit of what Mr. Rastogi and Mrs. Rastogi were saying, the property is situated in the R5 zone. We do meet all the underlying bulk requirements of the R5 zone with the exception of two parts of that, which is why we're here tonight seeking two variants. One variance is for the impervious coverage. The other variance is for the maximum allowable accessory use for a rear yard. The impervious coverage for the property is 35% by the ordinance. Today, there's about 30% coverage. With their proposal, it'll be about 38%, equating to about 670 square feet. With the variance for accessory use, allowed 20% or 23.2%, about 260 square feet over the accessory use of the rear yard. So how did we deal with the additional 660 square feet over what's permitted by the ordinance? We do have a proposal for a dry well, which is situated on the downside of the two terraced walls. We did do a soil analysis of that soil where that dry well is to be situated. We had lab work done on it. We have a K2 value. Certainly provides enough perk rate with the K2 to accommodate that 600 and some odd square feet. I'm assuming there would be an engineering review if we were to get approval, and I'm sure your engineer will look into those calculations and design a little bit more. In support of the variance, obviously there's no additional property that we can buy from any of the adjoining properties. I think it's a good use for the property. I'm not a planner. I'm not testifying as a planner. However, with other pools in the area, I don't think this is a detriment to any of the neighbors at all. I believe there is support neighbors to the right for this application, and to the left, I don't know if, yes. And again, as they did mention, we are eliminating about 330 square feet of the existing deck. That would be this area, which is crosshatched. So the remaining deck, the existing deck today would be torn down and rebuilt. I don't know if any of you had an opportunity to go out and see the property yet. The deck is in bad shape. I was afraid to walk on it myself, no disrespect, but it needs to be replaced. As far as any other part of the application, there's no modifications to the dwelling. There's no modifications to any other part of the yard, with the exception of reconstructing the existing railroad tie wall, which is also in need of replacement. So with that, any questions you board may have?
What are you over in terms of exceeding accessory use in the rear yard? You're by 3.2%. What is that in
Correct.
terms of square feet?
About 270 square feet.
In which one are you saying you're 270 over?
In the accessory use,
Lot
yeah.
coverage, okay, how much?
The 3 point some odd square feet, about 660 square feet. Permitted is 35%, we're at 38.2%.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Would you be able to put in a pool without needing any variances? Or would it be impossible to put in a pool?
We could certainly put a pool in. I don't think that pool would meet the needs of the homeowner, nor would we be able to provide a patio area around that pool that, you know, should be required for proper use of the pool. Yes, ma'am.
I have a follow-up question to that question, which is, if you're a swimmer, which you guys talked about how your kids are swimming, you need a 25-yard pool. This pool is 31 by 37. So can you elaborate a little bit more on the point that was made, or the question just before mine?
I would defer that to.
I can take that question.
Stand up to the microphone, please.
Yes, sorry about that. I can take that question. So we were trying to keep it to the bare minimum size that is doable. Like we were told, like at least you can have 40 square feet or above kind of an area for people to be able to like do a decent thing. We are trying to keep it minimum because we don't have space, to be honest. So I hope that, I don't know if that
No, the
answers the
point,
question.
I'm sorry, the point I'm not quite understanding. If the pool is, well, maybe there's something more to it. If the pool is for your kids to swim laps, it's potentially longer than you need. If there's a different reason, you need a 25-yard pool.
Right, and
Sorry, let me redo my math. Maybe I'm off. No, sorry, my bad. Oh, no, I see your point. Okay, I take it back.
yeah, no worries, but it's a valid question.
No,
I
no,
just
I
wanted
get
to
it. So that's the minimum size. And why the L shape?
because we were trying to at least create some spot to walk down and, also use the pool for other
Actually,
things.
your pool is not big enough, maybe.
Trust
I'm
me,
thinking of it the wrong way. Your
No,
pool might not be big enough for laps, right?
trust me, you're hitting a nerve that I'm fully aware of. Thank you, though.
Sorry.
No, please, valid question.
Yes.
So I don't see where you've met the criteria, okay, for certainly not a C variance, but even for a C2 or C1.
Mhm.
So you have an enormously oversized lot for an R5. In fact, your lot would be oversized in an R4. So I'm struggling as to where, number one, this would be beneficial to the zoning plan or master plan to overdevelop an extremely oversized lot in that particular zone. So can you add a little color to that? Maybe
I
more
can.
meat on the bone?
Yeah, I certainly can. I can try to at least. So the current configuration of the dwelling, if you've been out there again, the back of the dwelling is a walkout basement type. There are sliding doors that are around this portion of the dwelling. So a deck is needed, right? Otherwise, all of those sliding doors would have to be eliminated. They are from the main living portion of the house. So that at least that portion of the deck is required.
When you say the portion's required, is that the existing wood deck area that you're referring to?
Correct. That is the current wood deck area, which is here, okay? And you'll see it says proposed deck. That is all being removed and replaced without any expansion. It's actually an elimination of 33 square feet, which is on the left side of the house. So we're actually removing some of the deck, but putting back what was there today or what is there today.
So I'm not here to design your pool, but as Jessica here sort of asked, what can you do to make this closer to compliant? Because, like I said, it looks like you're taking multiple bites of the apple here. You have a large lot,
Yes.
oversized lot, yet somehow we're not even close to. I mean, you're given more already because you have an oversized lot.
Right. Absolutely. Yes.
So you took that one.
Yes.
You took that gift.
Yes.
Now you asked for it.
Yeah.
That's why I'm struggling here from a proof standpoint. I haven't heard compelling testimony as to why. Other than why.
I would let the homeowner address that as appropriate.
Yeah, look, I appreciate your point that maybe our lot size is bigger than the R5 zone, but that's our lot size. And when you look at our lot size, look at our building, look at everything else, if we need to put a pool and even have bare minimum for our kids to swim and make sure that we have the least amount of patio and make sure even after eliminating the deck, we have some deck in front of our sliding doors, this is what we came up with. That's why we are asking for a variance. If we didn't, by the way, trust me, if we didn't need it, I would not have wasted the committee's time. Like we, as you can see, like removing this deck and making a window here where we have a sliding door today, creating more impervious space, adding drywall, all these things are adding to my cost and is not helpful to my family room, which I could have opened up the sliding door and sat outside. So I'm trying to match it. I appreciate that, yes, my lot size is higher. Yes, I ended up paying higher value for that higher lot size. I get it. But like when I'm trying to meet your demands or not your demands, I should say, rephrase it, your rules and regulations and trying to meet my requirements, this is the best optimized solution got to, right? Like I didn't come here saying I should keep my deck in place and ask for a bigger pool and let's see what we can do here. Like I didn't want to waste your time, and to be honest, I didn't want to waste my time because like, you know, time with kids is precious and I want to make sure like they get to enjoy the pool sooner rather than later. Again, it may not be a compelling argument, it's in our minds, and like, you know, sometimes we may be thinking differently than the committee.
Do you think maybe, could you maybe just explain what we're trying to say about not needing, like not seeing the
Yes.
reason for, because I'm also hearing a lot of personal circumstances,
So-
so.
Do you want,
Yeah,
before I
let me-
answer
Yes,
this
let me,
last question, do you want to?
yes, I do, thank you.
Alright.
So, right, again, the permitted impervious coverage is 35%. Currently, the property is just over 30%. If we were to abide by the ordinance of 35%, that would only allow about 1,300 square feet between what's there today and to meet the allowable of 35%. That 1,300 square feet, they could not build the deck, build the pool, and quite frankly, any patio. Or it would be very minimal that it probably wouldn't be worth doing. That's not answering the question, but it's offering more information that you might find helpful.
But because this is an oversized lot, typically what an applicant would do is come in and present proofs for what's called the C2 variance, benefits outweigh the detriments. You're aware of that even as an engineer, right?
Yep.
And you're also aware that personal circumstances are not to be taken into consideration by a board in assessing positive and negative criteria for the relief that's being sought certainly here. So are you able to articulate for the board reasons why this is a better zoning alternative for the property being in the R5 zone?
Potentially, as I mentioned before, I think that the use of the property is consistent with other properties within that R5 zone.
But we're not here for the use.
I mean, the
It's a
accessory
permitted
use.
Accessory use.
Yeah.
But the question, have you looked at the lots that have pools? What is their impervious coverage? What is their accessory rear coverage?
So, right, so as we know, the minimum lots area within the R5 zone is 14,500. This lot, it being at just over 20,000 square feet is average. It's not on the largest side of the R5. It's certainly not on the smaller side of the R5. Again, did I look at exact numbers for other properties within the area? No, I did not. Did I look briefly at other properties within the R5? Oh, there's one with a pool, there's one pool, patio, so on and so forth. Sort of just doing a rough idea of, you know, if this was even possible. Originally, when they came to me and Mr. Bardone, the pool was much larger, much more patio, so on and so forth. And we Mr. Bardone, who was the contractor, both spoke to the owners and said, this is ridiculous. We're way over as it is. Let's reduce the size down. What is the minimum size of the pool that you could live with? To answer your question, I know that sort of was a roundabout answer to the question. A brief look at the other properties, the smallest being in the largest size of the properties, somewhere in the middle. Again, I don't think that this is a detriment to the R5 zone with the use that we're proposing tonight.
I'm just concerned because it's an oversized lot, and between impervious coverage and the accessory use in the rear yard, we're talking about, you know, around 1,000 square feet over. You know, we have applicants who come before the board who literally can't put in a pool without a variance. Here, you could put in a pool. I mean, it might not be the exact size. You might not be able to get, you know, as much surrounding patio, but it's an oversized lot. So I think it would be helpful to hear from other board members, but that's kind of my concern.
Point
And
well
just
taken.
I'm not seeing any, argument here that kind of meets the criteria for, us being able to grant a variance.
Well, let me jump to the public. Any questions from the board for the professional here?
So how deep is the deck?
So from where the decking is to the actual coping edge, it's about 12 feet. That's 12 feet of decking. Correct.
In terms of the width?
The width is, so it would be from the house out probably 40 feet.
So that's about 480 square feet or 500 square feet of deck, the one that you're proposing to make, without taking into account the one that is going to be taken out.
Correct.
And in terms of the pool size, we're talking about just 31 by 37 plus the patio area, so that's another about 1,200.
Well, it's actually 970 square feet is the actual water surface area. Taking out the L shape in this corner here, and that does include the spa.
So the 31 by 37 does or does not include the spa?
It does. That's total water surface area.
Any other questions?
I just have a housekeeping matter for you.
Yes, sir.
I know that notice was put out to the neighbors for 200 feet.
Yes.
Do you know if any of those notices were returned by the post department?
Done.
No, I know that returned receipt, but
They wouldn't get it.
it was,
Just the post office, they just.
they just, what do they do with it?
Failing themselves on the hot day.
They just stay there.
Yeah, probably.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Any questions from the public regarding this matter? Questions?
For any of the witnesses who have testified this evening?
Any comments from the audience? Please go forward. I'll swear you in.
Raise your right hand, please. You swear from the testimony you're about to give in tonight's proceeding to be the truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes,
Your name and address for the record.
Marnie Cohen,
Yes.
Marnie, M-A-R-N-I, Cohen, 45 Canubrook Road in Short Hills.
Where's your house in relation to the property?
It's 2 houses away and across one street. Like,
Okay,
so it's
the
on
other side of
Canubrook.
Thackeray, on Canubrook, okay.
Yeah, like the end of Thackeray.
Got it.
Yeah, so it's 2 houses away.
Thank you.
No, I've been speaking with them, for a long time with this. I know that they've had this in mind, and I know their pool is smaller than what, I think a 20 by 40 is kind of like the standard backyard pool to my knowledge. And I'm not an expert at all, but I'm here and I want to, explain how I see that this could be supported. And I feel like they've really made the pool, even to Ms. Lawrence's comment that it's almost not big enough for what they may need, that they've really thought about the size and protecting what they can with the property, the neighbors, the value, et cetera, and the variances, of course. And they did not do this lightly. And I feel like they're making the bare minimum that they can do as far as the size of the pool to accommodate, what they can.
Thank you. Any other comments from the audience regarding this application? In that case, I will close the public portion of this application. Board members, your thoughts?
And just keep in mind, this is a majority vote, and I believe that, given the fact that it is an undersized lot, that primarily, oversized lot, that you would, I recommend primarily be considering the criteria for C2 variance, but of course, you're free to consider the existing structures preventing an opportunity to conform to the ordinance if you so choose.
Look, I think consistent with what some of my colleagues have said, I'm very sympathetic to what the applicants want. I'd like them to be able to do what they want to do, but I think it's not really our job to deliver that. It's more to make sure that whatever is being proposed to be built is consistent with our ordinances. And so I just don't see how the proofs have been met here. And I understand the applicant's need or desire to have a pool that works for their personal needs, but a pool could be built on the property that would be compliant. And I think building a pool of this size and a deck of this size on an oversized property is troubling to me, and I just don't see how the proofs have been met.
I agree with everything that you said, and I am sympathetic, but, and I know it's not our role to talk about the use, but it's actually too small to be a lap pool anyhow. And that aside, yeah, I completely agree with what you said, that, that I don't see how the proofs have been met. I don't see, the need for the pool of this size when you could build a pool and on an oversized lot.
So don't have the impression that we're here not to grant variance relief. That is not the case. But when it comes to a C2 variance, in this case, there has to be, like I said, some compelling testimony as to why we need to go substantially above our coverages in terms of impervious and accessory coverages when we have a lot that, as mentioned, is not only large for an R5, but would be considered oversized in an R4. And I do not feel that argument has been frankly addressed or even remotely dealt with. So I would not support this application as presented.
Just my thoughts here. Clearly sympathetic to your needs, the kids and the family that you want to kind of utilize this. I also, I'm aware that that is an area which is sort of sloped, and you're kind of addressing some of the concerns that come up with this in terms of building the drive and etc. I think those are good things. Those are clearly positive. Just from a size perspective, I think it does look, I don't have much to add here from what I'm hearing. There is clearly positives here that you have outlined, whether it kind of outweighs in terms of the numbers that you're up by and the variance you're seeking for. It's just, essentially you heard the committee.
So here's what we'll do. The public portion is closed, so there's no more testimony.
Okay.
But I will offer you this. If you'd like to carry this case and maybe think about the comments you heard this evening and come back again, we'll offer that to you, or you can take a vote. So.
I have to stand up and
Yeah,
speak.
please come forward.
Okay. Look, I appreciate what you're saying. My personal need aside, I respect what you guys are thinking about. So we'll not ask for a vote. Let us think about it.
And
And
here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna get another date for you, okay? To put on the calendar. So we'll see what Eileen has for you.
let us come back to you. We may have to reassess
Okay.
a lot of
Fine.
things.
Are you sure though? Because
Well,
you've given notice, okay? If you do not exercise a date now, okay, even as a placeholder.
can I come back tomorrow at least, or?
No, it has to be.
Okay, all right, sorry.
Take the date. You can always push if you have to.
Oh, okay, got it.
You can give them a date out a little bit.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, we have August
No.
19th or September 16th.
September 16th.
September 16th. Does that work for you guys?
I guess it does.
We only have one meeting in September.
September 16th is great.
September 16th looks like the winner, okay? You guys good with that?
Yeah,
Okay?
thank you.
For everyone in the audience that's here on this matter and those watching at home, calendar 398424 will be carried to September 16th. No further notice. Any changes that are made to these plans will be on the website or available at Town Hall. Next up, we have calendar 399024.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Which is carried from 6/3/24, 28 Barber Drive. Come on, man.
You're going to testify? Why not?
Why not?
Did you swear
I mean,
from the testimony you give in tonight's proceeding to the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Okay, your names to the record, please.
Scott,
I'm sorry.
Scott Levin.
Samantha Levin.
John Baranello, sorry.
B.
John
Just
Baranello,
spell.
Baranello.
Richard Keller, Keller.
Okay, who would like to, you ready?
Yes.
Okay, who would like to start?
I'll start.
Super.
Good evening. My name's Samantha Levin. This is my husband, Scott. We live at 28 Farbrook Drive. We have 3 boys, ages 11, 9, and 5. We have lived in this house for 6 years, almost to the day. And this is our first house that we ever purchased, and it's our first house in Short Hills. Ever since we moved into the house, we had desires to redo the backyard. We love the interior of the house, but the outside is challenging, just based mainly on the slope of the yard. It slopes down significantly. And we have desire to put in a pool. But as I said, the grade of the yard is quite challenging. It makes it very difficult to play, to have a catch. My mother-in-law has even fallen on a couple occasions when watching the children and kind of tumbling down the hill because it is so steep. So we are excited about the design and the plans that John Baranello and Rich Keller have helped us with. We are able to put the pool in without any sort of variance. We've met the lot coverage and all that. It's just the steep slope that we would like to be able to cut into more so that we can create a good flow between our driveway and our deck above, and then what we're planning to do down below. So I'll pass it over to Rich Keller to talk you through why we are applying for this variance. Thank you.
Thank you. What's your credentials, please?
Rich Keller, I'm a licensed engineer and planner in the state of New Jersey, licensed as an engineer in 1989, planner in 1990. I have a Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering with a declared concentration in water resources and environmental engineering from Rutgers University. I also hold a Master's in Architecture from the New Jersey Institute of Technology with a concentration in urban planning and design. I have appeared before this board, approximately 110 boards throughout the state of New Jersey, both as a planner and an engineer. I provided engineering services to the borough, to the township of Long Hill for 3 years as their board engineer. And I was also the ad hoc planner for the borough of Caldwell for a number of years. My licenses are in good effect since my last appearance.
Thank you. Your credentials are accepted. Please proceed.
Thank you. I'll start with the drawing that you have before you, which is the variance application.
The project, I'm sorry, you're testifying both as a planner and as an engineer.
That's correct. The property itself is 132 feet wide by 156 feet deep. It is a somewhat irregular trapezoidal shape with a wing on the back end of it. It's located approximately 650 feet south from Great Hills Terrace along Farbrook on the west side, right across where Hampshire Road ties in, or the terminus of Hampshire is Farbrook. The property is 22,849 square feet in an R4 zone, so it is a conforming in terms of lot area, as well as all of the other bulk dimensions are fully conforming. With regard to the property itself, I'm going to go to an A1, which is the base survey. It's not prepared by my firm, but we did do the steep slope analysis. So this would be A1 dated 6/17/2024. There's a topographic survey by others. And what we've done is we took the steep slope inventory, which we did, and we superimposed on it in the blue dashed line. That's the areas that we're proposing to disturb. So of the property, it contains about 4 total green space, green highlighted areas. That's the steep slopes. Those are areas in excess of 20% per our ordinance definition. Property contains 4,518 square feet of steep slopes. Again, that's about 20% of the property is above 20% pitch. The steep slopes, as is, if you've gone to the site and had a chance to walk into the back, you can see there's a fair amount of distance between grade change between Farbrook and you go through to Westview, which is the street behind us. And if you draw a straight line from the center of Farbrook down to down to Westview, the properties are about 12.5%, 13%. But what happened, as is typical, when this was developed in the early 60s, they cut in Farbrook Road, they pushed a large building envelope, and they pushed slopes in the back and creating a series of steep slopes that are steeper than were there originally. And then I think that up and down, we're sort of the last property to be putting retaining walls because the properties surrounding us up and down Farbrook have all done a series of retaining walls to get pools in. Probably, judging by the look of the pools and pool decks, they certainly predate our current and maybe the last two iterations of our steep slope ordinance. So we're sort of one of the last ones to be developed here. These, what is interesting, and I'll show this through A2, you'll see the significant amount, there's a big swath of steep slopes directly behind the driveway.
Rich, before you go to A2, I think you mentioned that there's what, a blue line or something on A1?
Yeah, they want
It's hard to see, for the board to see.
Yeah, there's a blue dash line.
Someone up here to see.
Yep, there's a blue dash line we set within the green sort of pastel area. And those are the areas that on the grading plan we're proposing to disturb. So the green represents the total inventory of slopes in excess of 20%. And the dashed lines represent the limits of where we're looking to disturb. So our total variance request here is that we'd like to disturb 2,705 square feet where 1,000 square feet is permitted. So we'd be over by 1,705 square feet.
Is it 2705 or 2750?
Let me just 2705.
Just a question there. So is the dotted line essentially covering 1,700 square feet?
Yeah, the dotted line there represents 1,705 square feet. So if I go to my A2,
Real quick, jump back to, you have your elevations on there? Or no?
Yeah.
What are you gonna wind up with, or what are you starting with in terms of elevation?
well, essentially, I think the pictures kind of show what we're doing on the site.
Right.
So we're basically taking a line about the middle, the area that's not steep slope, the little sort of semi-flat layer they have that runs longer. We're using that as a baseline. We're kind of holding that, dropping the pool in. We're taking the existing patio. We're actually lowering it about 1 foot 9 inches, so we can get that down lower, and then we're covering that, which will be part of the building coverage, and it'll be fully conforming. We'll go over to the grading plan, variance plan you have for you. So we are lowering that terrace, and then we are putting the pool in. And I would point out that if we were to just do the pool and the retaining walls and the covered terrace, and not do any of the grading that connects from the driveway, which we're going to get to in a second, or push back a little to get a slightly steeper area, we could do the pool and the covered patio with less than 1,000 square feet of steep slope disturbance.
The pad's sort of there where the pool's going. It's like
Yeah.
something exists.
Yeah, but it's already, we're going to use that's natural.
Right.
We need to push back a little bit. We're doing a smaller than usual pool, 18 by 36, 18 by 38. So we cut it down from the usual 20 by 40. And then because there is when they push the steep area, there's a steep portion that extends up towards the pool. So we need a couple of retaining walls to mitigate that. But essentially, we're looking to put that pool right on the existing plateau, just extend it out, but looks natural. And then what really has been a problem is that there's no real good connection. I'll go back to the A1 for a second. Right now, there's a deck off the first floor. So it's a walkout basement in the back where the patio is. So if you come off the driveway and you're visiting in the rear yard, you can walk up, and it's not too steep, up into the wood deck. If you're looking to go from the wood deck down to the outdoor patio, which will be covered, you have to walk down the steps, and then you have to traverse part of that steep slopes. Or when you have guests that come and they want to get from the driveway to the patio if you're entertaining, they have to walk across the steep section. Or when grandma is looking to go down in to be with the kids in the flat area, they need to traverse the steep slope area. So we're looking at creating a series of walls in there so that we can create a flat zone that will get us from the driveway to both the deck, the stairs up to the deck, and with some stairs, an access to the patio. So that was shown on our plan where we're looking to create a flat area, some steps down, and then we'll create a flat area that we can then, with some stairs up to, we'll reorient the stairs on the deck, go up to the deck, or continue on to the patio. So it creates a whole safe zone. So this area right in here is really done for the purposes of creating an accessible walkway and connection without having to walk across steep slope lawn from the deck and from the driveway to the covered terrace and ultimately to the pool area. Again, just to, if you've obviously been to the site, but this is photo board number 1, designated as A2, dated today, 6/17/2024. All photos were taken by me this last Friday, about 1 in the afternoon. They accurately represent the site as it exists today. Barbara, looking from the street, you can see by the tennis court, the basketball hoop, you can see it starts to drop up right behind there. None of this will be visible from the street. If I come into photograph number 2, you can see this is the area where if you come down the stairs, or you want to get from the driveway down to there, you cross a section that starts to dish and bowl, and it becomes steeper than 20% to about 30% as you navigate across that portion. Photograph number 4, as we came into the backyard, we look to the right. At 24, you can see a retaining wall, a second retaining wall. So these yards have been terraced. Looking to the rear yard, the property behind us has been terraced. There's a fence that's back there. That's more than 27 feet away from where the proposed walls are. So really, we're keeping all of the setbacks for the pool, the walls, the disturbance. That's all meets the setbacks required in the zone. I also took a picture to the left. You can see a terrace down to an intermediate level, down to a pool area, and there's a large retaining wall at the back of that, the landscaped area. And then finally, I stood at the patio, which is going to come down 21 inches. 21 inches. We're going to drop that down, take a couple steps out so we can get that closer to the level of where we want to put the pool. Again, the pool's sort of sitting right in that zone, the natural zone that's right there. We're just looking to terrace down to it and put a little terracing on that back corner, just to keep it up. We're not changing any existing drainage patterns across the neighbor's yard. As indicated, we could do the pool without a steep slope variance. We'd have about 826 to 850 square feet of steep slope disturbance. When we provide the flatter rear yard area, so we push back a little just to get a little bigger play space in that area, it adds about 475 square feet to that. And then when we look to create that safer transition, that's that middle zone where we're coming off the driveway, connecting a spine of circulation that's relatively flat with steps, but navigable. That drives up another 1,404 square feet. So our total is 2,705, where 1,000 square feet is permitted. So we need relief from the steep slope section 608.5, disturbance of steep slopes, 1,000 square feet is permitted. We're looking at 2,705. So we're asking to exceed what's permitted by 1,750. And I would point out, this is all, none of this is natural steep slopes. 608.7.I, separation of retaining walls, 6 feet is required for 6-foot high walls, 3 foot is proposed. I would say, by the way, I will have to mark this into evidence because I did make the change today. A3. We'll make this yeah. So one of the things we do is I did take a look.
Rich.
Yep. So A3 is the variance application plan. It's VA1 before you. It has a revision. Its original date is 4/15/2024, and we revised it. Grading revised, pool lowered 6/17/2024. Two things are different than the plan that you have before you. We took off the pool equipment. We realized we had migrated into an area that didn't comply, so we took the pool equipment off. It'll be put into a conforming location, either tucked into the house or under the deck, fully compliant with the setback requirements. And when we did lower the pool, based upon a little clarification with the landscape architect, we were able to cut the wall heights down. So the highest wall in the back is about 5.5 feet now instead of 6 feet. And most of the walls have been lowered about 9 inches throughout the property. In terms of the separation of retaining walls, 6 feet is required for 6-foot high walls. We've got 3 feet proposed. Those walls are dropping down to about 5.25 to 5.5. We're still looking to do 3-foot proposed. And again, I think we've had letters in the past from the township engineer talking about the purpose of that separation requirement is to make sure that walls are designed so they construct to Walls need to be carefully designed because they will start to structurally interact when they're less than that distance. Well, clearly, we can design walls that are less than that, so they'll be designed appropriately and safely. The variance proofs, we see this as a combination of C1 and C2, where the existing man-made topography and its location on the site creates a hardship, and redeveloping the existing property in a manner that is consistent with the existing neighborhood without the need for variance relief. And the C2, where the purposes of the Land Use Act are advanced and the benefits outweigh the detriment. We see that the safety is advanced. We're creating a more safe and navigable access both from the second floor deck down to the terrace without having to go through the house, and also from the driveway into the backyard and to the entertainment spaces on the property, again, without having people slip down the grade. So we think that at least one of the purposes of the Land Use Act is advanced. With regard to the negative criteria, we see no substantial detriment to the public good and no substantial impairment to the intent and purpose of the zoning plan and zoning ordinance. Mitigating any impact is that it's not visible from the street what we're doing. We also do have I won't make Mr. Baronello with his grumbly voice testify, but if we have our A4, which is a landscape plan prepared by Mr. Baronello's firm, Open Grove, 11 residents. It is undated, so we'll just date it today. And you can see some of the configuration has changed a little bit with the walls, but the overall overriding idea is that we will be taking the back woodlands will remain, and we will place a combination of Norway spruce, Leland cypress, and green giants along the perimeter, landscaping between the walls, and more importantly, along the perimeter. So it's really as much for our privacy as anything else, but that'll supplement, and there's a generous landscape plan to buffer between, both on top of the walls and below the walls. So it's really an opportunity to provide additional landscaping to buffer the heavy woodlands that are remaining in the back corner of the property. So certainly, we don't see any negatives. We see only positives as an improvement to the aesthetics of the neighborhood. The retaining walls will be designed structurally. I would say actually, pools are actually interesting because pools water weighs less than concrete. So pools actually provide less structural interaction on walls when you nest them. So, but they'll be designed accordingly. I won't go through all the background and purposes of why we have a steep slope ordinance in the background. I've done it before, but I would say that we don't cut across any of those purposes. Flattening area slows water down. There are no water bodies downhill from us to affect. There will be no loss of soil. We'll be required to provide a soil conservation district permit, and it'll be enforced. There's no changes in the natural topography and drainage pattern. In our opinion, this topography is not natural, and the drainage patterns will be exactly as they are. We've noted a place in the drawing for dry wells, which roof water will be connected into. We will be required to get a grading permit. The property is not forested. We will, of course, be required to provide a tree replacement plan with much more detail to the Open Grove plan you see before you. We think that there's no compromised aesthetic values. We think that water quality can be unaffected. There'll be no increase in runoff. We know how to build in steep slopes. It's a relatively modest plan. We're trying to work, as Mr. Platner indicated, we're trying to really work with the natural grade. Cut in the one area on the uphill side to create a natural circulation path, and just fill a little bit on the right to create an area for the pool. So we think that is, we think it meets the proofs in support of the variances for C1 and C2, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
So looking at the neighbor to the rear, the rather unique materials they used for their retaining wall.
They're lovely, aren't they?
And the hooks are on them still, which is kind of nice. In case you want to move them. What are you guys using for material?
It'll be a much smaller, more traditional modular block, keystone type retaining wall.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, it will not be jumbo blocks. I've never used one of those yet, and you can guarantee I never will.
In the backyard.
They're
Extensive use.
They're pretty bad.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Rich, on your A3, you changed the pool. You had, what we're looking at is 359.08 as your elevation.
Yeah, I dropped that down to 358.33.
So that since the bottom of the wall, the lower wall at that point is going to be 350. So you're looking at an 8-foot difference, 8.5.
Yeah, so at the lowest point, my wall is 350. Well, it's going to be at 350.5.
Right.
So yeah, they're talking about just under seven, just about 7 feet and change in total.
Right.
But again, that's
In total,
pretty
right.
heavily wooded through there. So I don't think, and actually, what's interesting is the grade comes back up. So if you look, there's a low point that comes through here, and the grade starts to come back up as you come to the next fence. So our wall is 27 feet off of that closest fence, and between the existing landscaping, which will remain unaffected, yeah, we do have a wall. It gets to be, in the newer configuration, it gets to be 5¼ feet high, but that does meet code. And so I think in that location, the fact that we're also going to be adding in base foundation landscaping, I think you will not be able to see it, especially since once you come over that rise, these properties, as was shown in the photograph, these properties drop under the 30 feet or so. So when they're below, I don't know that they even see these walls.
So just for clarity, your first wall's how high now?
First wall, the wall around the pool, we tried to keep it 2 feet or less.
Right, and then the next wall down is what?
It ranges from now 1½ feet up to 5¼ 3¼ at the corner, and then back to 0. So it's just follow as that land undulates down, we had to drop it. We tried to keep everything at 4 feet, but we're about 20 feet, 15 feet in here. We got over the 4 foot.
It says on your site plan, the variance plan, it looks like there's a sewer easement that runs from Princeton Terrace down to your property.
Yes.
Is any of the proposed disturbance or construction activities going to be impacted?
I did add that in, so another change on this plan here. We saw that the easement's adjacent. There is there on the base survey we were given, there was a,
We're talking about A3.
I'm sorry, I'm onto my A3, correct.
Yeah, okay.
So I've added that manhole in. That is the start of the line. So we have a line that comes out of the corner of the house and ties over to that. It comes around the pool. If we need to either adjust the pool by sliding in a couple feet, or we need to modify that line to get in there, but the easement does not continue across the property. That's the start of the sanitary for our subject property to tie into.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Any questions from the audience regarding the testimony you've heard this evening? Any comments from the audience regarding this application? Then I'll close the public portion. Board members, your thoughts?
I think one thing that stood out to me was that these steep slopes are man-made, they're not naturally occurring. I think that there's a clear hardship here with the way that the backyard is currently configured with these steep slopes. So I can support the application.
Yeah, I agree. I think there is clearly a hardship. It seems to me the proofs have been established. And I think it's probably beneficial to the property to make it safer and more usable. We appreciate that the size of the pool has been reduced, and I would be supportive of the application.
So now if I'm taking the steep slope ordinance and if I was to rewrite it, what would make sense? Where I think 1,000 is probably too much in R6. I'm not sure what it would be in R4. It's probably not 10%, but what is it? So where 1,000 I think is definitely not enough. So, it really just depends on topography. And, I think this makes a usable backyard at the same time. It really doesn't impact neighbors. And I think that's one of the things that concerns me most with the steep slope applications is what it does to the surrounding properties. Where you don't want to create a walled city for your neighbors, where I don't think this will do that. So I think that I would approve this application.
I'll jump in. Likewise, I think the way you've incorporated the different plateaus, if you will, and the different rolling grades we're working with here, I think it's really, really good. I would be inclined to support as well. It was nicely done.
Do I have a motion?
Move approval?
And a second?
I can second.
Joseph Caulfield,
Yes.
Chandra Harjani,
Yes.
Amy Lawrence. Yeah. Gary Rosen.
Yes.
Priscilla Sarah,
Yes.
Jessica Black,
Yes.
Craig Whitman.
Yes. Good luck with the project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. Have a good night.
Can I have 2 minutes?
Yeah, absolutely. We're gonna take a 2-minute break, folks. Meeting at 5. So let the record show that Mr. Caulfield, we're recusing on this case. And Mr. Stolman.
So you have
We have 7.
Okay, you're- Floor is yours, sir.
Hey, thank you, Chairman, members of the board. Richard Skolnick on behalf of Amergy Solar. Amergy is the vendor and the installer of the solar panels that are proposed tonight. I have with me Joshua Kudre from the Sills Cummins firm. He's going to be representing the church and the church's interests in tonight's application. We're here for conditional use approval and conditional use variances to install a carport with solar panels in the church's parking lot. You're all familiar with the facility. It's identified as block 1712, lot 23 on the tax maps with an address of 50 and 52 Short Hills Avenue. Houses of worship are conditional uses in the R6 zone. Mr. Lanzafama will go over the relief, but we have 4 witnesses, all very brief. We have Father Larry from the church, who's going to briefly discuss why the church wants this solar installation, and Mr. Kudre is going to handle that aspect. We have Joey Tatar from Solar Mounts LLC. That's the entity that constructs the carport itself. He's an operations manager. Frank DeChico is the Chief Commercial Officer of Amergy. They handle the solar part of the structure. This is unique in a certain way in that the municipal land use law itself in Section 4 sets forth that solar energy is an inherently beneficial use. Mr. Lanzafama will go over that, but the short story is that the MLUL, the Municipal Land Use Law, has picked out just a very few uses and specifically identified them as inherently beneficial, and solar is one of them. And that means that this use is deemed to universally be considered of value to the community because it fundamentally serves the public good and promotes the general welfare. So we have the state legislature telling us that this use universally is considered of value to the community and it fundamentally serves the public good and promotes the general welfare. So we start, I think, at least with a little leg up in terms of certainly other commercial uses. This context is a little different because it's a conditional use, but we'll talk about that a little bit. So with that, I'm going to turn it over, Chairman, to Mr. Kudray.
So, thank you for the introduction, Mr. Skolnick. For the record, Joshua Kudray, Koodray, appeared from the law firm of Sills, Cummins, and Gross on behalf of St. Rose of Lima Catholic Church. Just want to thank everybody for their time and consideration this evening on behalf of our client. I do have Father Larry Evans here. I know Mr. Skolnick's going to be handling the technical aspects of the application, explaining, why the structure cited where it is, et cetera, with the solar company and their representatives. But I just wanted the board to hear from the church's perspective why the proposal is important. So if I could just please call Father Larry.
Sure, we're going to swear you in, sir.
Yes, sir.
Do you affirm testimony you give tonight be the truth, whole truth, and but the truth?
I do.
Just your name for the record, please.
Larry Evans, second.
Larry Evans,
The second.
the second.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Just spell your last name, please.
EVANS.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Father.
So,
Hold on. Let's just do a couple really quick. I know you want to jump into it. Very eager. It's first time testifying before a board. I just want to remind you, I know public speaking is your thing. You're very, very familiar with it. But we do have a court reporter, so just do your best to try to speak into the microphone and speak slowly, okay? So, Father Evans, you're the pastor at St. Rose of Lima, correct?
yes, I am.
Okay. And how long have you been the pastor of the church?
I am completing 2 years. July 1st, I start my third year.
And you've been in service in the ministry for over 35 years, correct?
That is correct.
And you've served a variety of positions throughout that time?
I have came here as a pastor in a previous parish and served in other parishes in the Archdiocese.
Okay, so as pastor at St. Rose of Lima, can you just briefly describe your role, duties, and responsibilities?
For all practical purposes, I'm the CEO, CFO, COO. I have complete and authorized say about what happens there. Anything that I don't have say about would go before the Archbishop of Newark, Cardinal Tobin.
And you can confirm that you executed the application documents that were submitted this evening on behalf of the church, right?
Yes, I
And you're
did.
duly authorized to do so?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. You're generally familiar with the application materials that were submitted and that are before the board this evening?
Oh, yes.
And you heard me say it, and we'll get right to the point. Father, why is this application important to the church?
Part of my responsibility when I came here is, as populations change and demographics change, is to find ways to, first of all, be environmentally friendly, but also to reduce our expenditure. We cannot continue to rely on people coming to church to dig their hands in their pockets when there is a way that we can help reduce our PSE&G bills to help continue the mission of the church in serving the Millburn Short Hills area.
And as you mentioned, the stewardship component of it, it's obviously, as Mr. Skolnick alluded to, and we'll hear more testimony about it, but if we're able to help serve the environment, be a better neighbor,
Absolutely.
it's a good component, correct?
As far as I'm concerned, it is. Can I just say?
Please.
In my last assignment, we had already started exploring this. The company there went out of business. When I came here, I wanted to continue to explore it because I do find it very beneficial. So it's not just this area, it's beneficial all over.
Promised we would be brief, so.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
Judging by the pictures, and you may correct me if I'm wrong, looks like there's existing solar now, correct? Or is that?
There is no, so where the pictures, in
Yeah,
terms of the
I think on
carport,
the right side over there above.
on the school,
Yeah,
on the school, yes, there are solar panels.
okay.
We just put those in this past year
Got
on
it.
top of the school.
Okay, and so this array is the only additional solar you're putting on the facility, or?
Yes, there's the panels on the school subsidizes the school. The array would subsidize the church and the rectory. The church and the school are our biggest consumers of electricity.
Is it all under your purview, the entire school?
The entire property is under my purview. Anything St. Rose and Lima Short Hills is my purview.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Ask a couple questions. So, is this project going to cover what percent of your electricity needs for the church and the rectory? Do you know?
I don't believe I think
Okay.
some of the experts from
That's-
Amergy can cover that.
That's fine, but you're not selling it, you're not putting it in
Oh,
the
no,
grid
it
itself. It's
cannot be
just figured
sold.
For the property's use itself.
It's not allowed to be sold.
And do you know whether you're proposing any lighting under canopies, or is that for another witness?
There is lighting, but let's defer that to the other witness, if you don't mind.
Actually, I have one question.
Sure.
Do you know why this area was chosen as opposed to other parking areas on site? If you know.
Oh,
I think he does know, but I would like, I don't want to get in front of the testimony.
Mr. Kudry, go ahead. You're
Very protective, I apologize.
That's all good. Go ahead.
That's all I had on direct, so,
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Chairman, want to open to the public, or we'll do that after everybody?
Yeah, we'll do that.
That's fine. So we're going to call Joey Tatay. He doesn't have the answers to those three questions, but the next witness will, and he's just going to be 5 minutes himself. So we're going to hand this out. Mark this as A1. Joey, if you could come on up. We have a handout, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pages. Joey, we're going to get you sworn in.
Just raise your right hand, please. Do you swear from testimony about to give tonight's proceeding to be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Your name for the record, spelling your name, please.
Joey, and it's Tatar.
Tatar, I'm sorry.
You got it right the
How
first
do you
time.
spell that?
Tatar.
Okay, and what's your position with Solar Mounts?
Operations manager.
And what's their role in this project?
So we are a designer and manufacturer of the racking system itself. And then we also are the mechanical installers. So we do the foundation work, the steel erection. We put the solar modules on top of the structure itself and then leave it to the electrician experts at Amergy to come in and finish the job.
And your company has done a bunch of projects in Jersey?
Yeah, yep. So we've done about 11 megawatts total of these structures in New Jersey. We've done over 16 megawatts of total solar projects in New Jersey.
Okay, and that's quite a bit of power.
Yeah, yep.
Okay.
I think this one's 110 kilowatts. So
Okay, on the third page of the exhibit I handed out and marked as A1, you list some of the municipalities you've worked in.
Yep.
Okay, and you prepared this exhibit in conjunction with me to get ready for tonight?
that is correct. Yes.
Okay, and just a couple issues. Wind load, that's a code issue, really.
Yeah.
You do the calculations, they've been submitted actually.
Correct. That is correct. Yep. So we do a SCE 7-16 for this area, risk category 2, which I believe came out to 114 mile per hour wind load and 25 PSF snow.
Okay, and those materials have actually been submitted and approved by the
Correct.
building department here in Millburn?
Correct.
Okay, operationally, any issues with snow or snow plowing?
No, not at all. Nope. So it actually mitigates some of the snow plowing needed in parking lots.
Okay, from your standpoint, any impact on parking or traffic circulation?
No.
We're looking for a minor height variance, as we've discussed and we've talked about. Can you tell the board why, from your perspective, you think it makes sense to have the approximate 2.5 extra
Well,
feet?
Rick, why don't you, before you ask them the question, you should just lay the foundation for the board as to what this variance is and what the deviation is.
Sure. So there is a variance that's listed in the notice for height of an accessory structure. 18 feet permitted. Mr. Lanzafama will give the exact height, but the ultimate height is 20.7 feet, 20.7, which I think is 20 feet, 8 inches. So we are seeking a deviation from height of accessory structure. The wind load calculations, they were on page 1, 2, 3, they were on the 4th page. Joey, okay.
Mr. Tatar, you prepared A1 yourself?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
From your standpoint as the constructor and your experience operationally, why do you think it makes sense to have the extra approximate 2.5?
Yeah, so the main one being fire lane access for fire trucks to get through, having that 14-foot clear height with the tilt ending up, just above 20. So that's the main reason. So we've also, installed other folks racking before, and they claim that, oh, we only need 8 or 9 feet here. Trucks never come in here. Dump trucks never come in here. But what happens at 2 a.m, right? So we've been to many different sites where a garbage truck pulls in, turns around and hits the system, and then we're there to repair it. Same thing with the semi truck. I mean, it's just hard telling what goes on there when no one's looking. So we pride ourselves in always over designing all of our systems from the wind and snow loads up to thinking all of these things through.
So what's the height that you want to get on the undercarriage?
So the minimum low height clearance is 14.6.
Okay, and that, 14.6, that produces the overall height because you have the wingspan, so to speak,
Correct.
on this proposed carport.
Correct.
Okay. From your perspective, some benefits to the cars that will park underneath?
Yeah. So we have one at our shop in Michigan, and it's wonderful parking there in the summer. You don't have the sun beating on it all day. When it's snowing, you come out to your car and you don't have to clean off a bunch of snow. And then also, you don't get as wet if you're, getting to the back seat to grab your umbrella. You got a little extra coverage in that meantime.
Okay, Joey, thank you.
Thank
It's
you.
your first time testifying.
It is,
Right,
yes.
originally your boss was going to be here, but
Correct.
he entrusted you to come and handle the testimony tonight, so thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.
So, real quick, the way your purlins are designed, you go into a center truss system, and then you have a gutter in there, is that correct?
I am not sure on this system, but on some of them, yes.
So then, I guess, I'm gonna ask a broader question. When things melt, the rain falls on it, how does it drain?
So it's not a total coverage, right? It's not a sealed system. So, it does kind of still leak water through and on the bottom edges of the panels. So it doesn't, put a giant rush of water down into one spot of the parking lot per se. So that's kind of without a gutter system what we look at there.
So for the direction, for your drawings, it shows a gutter system. Are you the right guy to answer these questions to, or is there someone else better?
Yeah, Frank may be able to help us out.
There's no gutter system.
There's no-
Okay, so you show gutters on your drawings.
So we show those all as optional on all of our drawings.
Okay, so then, I actually have very little exposure to these things, so probably more questions than I should, but, so being this area freezes and then thaws and so on and so forth, now you have a covered area which is getting minimal sun, obviously, because you're absorbing it through solar panels, and then you have water that drips underneath. How does it not turn into an ice skating rink underneath that? With no proper gutter or water mitigation, how does it not turn into an ice skating rink?
Defer, you want me to answer?
You try to, if you can answer it,
Yeah.
do your best.
To do my best to answer it, from our experience, there is, some warmth from the panels and the sun that keep that warm, but also salt on the ground, just as if there wasn't any carport structure there, there'd be snow that melts there and is turned into ice anyway, so just salt.
Right, but typically the sun itself would aid in melting that. And the
Right,
salt is
so there's-
super
it's
effective
not-
without the sun.
Right, so it's not totally sealed, so there's still sun there, and I believe they're bifacial panels. So sun does still get through those, it's not a total seal, it's more.
Zooming in, this picture here referring to your hand, I mean, it looks like it's very minimal sun because through these. Over in the section over here, it looks pretty dull. I mean, obviously you have these things in Michigan,
Right,
But also this looks like it has a gutter system on it.
that one does, that is correct. That is in, that is in New York, Westchester.
Right, so they have a central gutter system where all the snow and ice would melt into,
That is
or rain, in this case.
And this one also has the, not to interrupt, but still has the 0.4 inch gap in between all of the modules.
Right, but, yeah, I mean, obviously that could be covered by snow and the snow melts underneath, so, okay. So, who chose the spot for to install these? How was that determined?
It was not myself.
Deferred, anyone?
We're gonna, our next witness.
Okay.
We'll talk about alternate spots also.
Okay, that's fine. Any questions from the board for this witness?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are all designs, I mean, forgetting the gutter system and like those options that you can put on aesthetically, are all the designs exactly the same?
It's,
Like, do they all have the same exact look? Are they all, I don't know, more like industrial looking, or
yeah, so.
are there any options, for aesthetic wise?
Yeah, throughout the industry, yes. We believe that this is more aesthetically pleasing personally. That's a preference and an opinion. A lot of the structures that you see around here are I-beams, and I-beams tend to be very industrial. So, this, and I believe is more aesthetically pleasing than most others.
So the pictures that you have in your packet here,
Mhm.
most of them are commercial buildings, commercial locations, okay? And the pictures that you've been placed.
Yep.
How often do you install these in more residential areas, and how does it worship?
Yeah, so the two pictures provided in Lodi and River Edge, those are actually at schools. So Boys and Girls Club of Lodi is up top, and then the bottom one is Yeshiva. So if you look closely, those are actually, in more residential areas. And so we do a little bit of both. We've done schools in Robbinsville, New Jersey, Sterling Regional School. We've done a restaurant, La Esperanza, which I like going to that one because they have good food, kind of right in the middle of a residential area as well. And then, obviously we do the commercial application. So we're well versed in both.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
Did your company also do the one on top of the school? Was that your project as well, the one that we kind of looked at earlier, the solar panel?
The rooftop part of it.
Nope, so we do have a rooftop application, but that is not ours.
You're the carport
Correct.
installer.
Correct.
Okay, we're gonna,
Let's see, anyone in the audience have any questions for this witness?
next witness, Frank DeChico.
Thank you.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear from the testimony you're about to give in tonight's proceeding to be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Your name for the record, spelling your name, please.
Frank DeCicco, DeCicco.
Okay, Frank, your company and your position with them?
Yeah, so Amergy Solar has been in business for about 15 years. We do both residential and commercial solar. We've done about 9,000 systems since we've been in existence. Operate in all Northeast, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, and also in California.
And you have an agreement with the Archdiocese?
Yeah, so we started about a year ago with the Archdiocese of Newark, and we have roughly about 12 projects going on with them. We've done Sacred Heart in Haworth, Our Lady of Mercy in Park Ridge, Union Catholic High School in Scotch Plains. And just to clarify a previous question, Amergy did do the rooftop solar on St. Rose of Lima. So it's two separate systems. They have 2 meters there. So 1 meter is for the school, the other meter is for the church. So there's the one that we installed, which is fully done and operating right now on the school, supplies roughly about 40 to 50% of their electric usage, only because that was the amount of roof space that we had
And how many
available.
kilowatts would that be on that system?
That's roughly about 50 kilowatt system.
So this is about 2 times.
Yeah, a little more than 2 times.
Is that because of size or technology?
Size.
Okay.
So the nice thing about the carport here is we're allowed in New Jersey what's called net metering, or behind the.
Before you get Frank, what is your role with Emergy Solar?
I'm in charge of the commercial department in sales.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So with the church uses roughly about 150,000 kilowatt hours of electric a year. In New Jersey, it's called net metering. So we look at the last 12 months usage per meter. We're allowed to design a system that will produce up to what the company has used in the last 12 months. We can't design a system that will produce more than their last 12 months usage. So basically, the system that we're proposing on the carport is going to cover 100% of the church's last 12 months usage, whereas the school was roughly about 40 to 50%.
Okay, there was a question about, before we get to the gutters, there was a question about lighting.
Yeah, so we're gonna install roughly about 3 lights underneath. It's just regular 4-foot lights that will have 2,200 lumens pointed face down. So it's just gonna light up the cars, the parking spots underneath. LED.
Dusk to dawn?
Dusk to dawn, yes.
Okay, and talk to us about the gutters. The chairman expressed some concern about water collection. Have you had any issues with these sorts of things? And what are
Yeah, so the
proposed
panels,
there?
it's not a roof, there's no roof on it. So the panels, as he had said, each panel is roughly about 3.5 feet wide by about 6.5 feet long. The panels don't butt up against each other. There's a gap, both width and length. So as it melts or it rains, it's just gonna drip down as if it was raining on the existing parking lot. Gutters are an option, not something that we looked at here.
I'm actually also gonna, for the board's edification, actually, there's a law that states that for solar panel applications, and this is partially due to the fact that they're deemed to be inherently beneficial use, section 4 of the municipal land use law, that the solar panel coverage, so to speak, is not to be included as part of impervious coverage for an application.
We're going over pavement anyway, so I appreciate it. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Just in case the board was concerned about impervious regardless of the state statute, we're not adding any. Anything else? Have you had issues with icing and so on with carport installations in your experience?
Not that I'm familiar with.
Just ask, in terms of emergency vehicles, trucks, et cetera, the applicant is asking for 20 feet, 7 inches or
20.7 feet.
20.7 feet. In your experience working on these projects, do you believe that is sufficient for purposes of getting emergency vehicles under the carport in the event of an emergency?
Yes.
Who chose the location?
Our company did.
Why there?
The biggest reason is that we actually have to tie into the main and do a line tap into the main and the meter. And the existing, where the meter is in the main is directly across in the garage, if you can see if it's on here.
Okay, this is the sheet drawing that we submitted from
Yeah, so
Casey and Keller. You're referring to sheet 1 of 2 that's part of the plan set?
Yeah, I'm sorry, the meter is here, but the main is right inside the basement of the church, right here. So we would be a very short run to get it there. With solar, you want to, we'll have the inverters mounted on the actual canopy structure. So the inverters, the panels make DC electric, the inverters change it over to AC. And then you always want to invert it as close as possible to the structure because there's a lot of loss on DC, much less loss on AC. And then you want the shortest run possible.
I'm not sure I understood what that meant, but
Okay.
it sounded like you were saying it should be closer.
Right, the closer,
But does it have to be? In other words, if you move that structure sort of further back, closer to the church, like what would that mean in terms of efficiency, and is it possible to do?
when you say closer to the church,
Well, it's hard to see.
the church is here.
If you made the structure diagonal, and created spaces sort of closer into that back area.
Yeah, no, The design is because this is going over the parking spots. So if we
You
change
could
the
change parking
design, I'm
You
sorry,
could change the parking spots, presumably.
I guess you could change the parking spots, I don't.
If you could change the parking spots, is there a reason why it couldn't go there?
No, you can always change the orientation.
And it wouldn't be
of the
too far
canopy.
away where it would just not be economical for the church, because they would lose too much energy, I don't know how to describe it.
Well, so you're saying take this array and just turn it 90 degrees, is that what you're saying?
Turn it. I'm looking at this picture here.
Perpendicular.
You're saying rotate it?
Yeah, rotate it and move it back a little bit.
Like if you moved it back.
Could, we'll try to have Mr. Lanzafama
Yep.
address that if he's able to.
Okay. So it seems like there's a way you could rotate it so it wouldn't be so front and center on Short Hills Ave.
Did you consider, based on Mr. Stein's question, ground mount as opposed to carports, since they're cheaper?
There's no property for the ground mount.
Okay.
Yeah. If we had the parking lot available, there's, one thing with the ground mount also, you need a big area, and keep in mind, when you're mounting on the ground, buildings will shade for quite some area, so you'd have to really have setback from all the structures that are on the property, so the array's not gonna be shaded.
I just want to go over, where's it? So you said right now, the amount of solar that is currently on this building covers what again? How much, what was the percentage?
The existing system?
40% of the school?
Of the
40%
school,
facility?
right. So you have 1 meter that supplies, 1 meter from PSE&G that supplies the school. And then there's a second meter that supplies the church. So what you see that we installed here is feeding the main in the school and covering roughly 40 to 50% of their annual usage.
So
For the school only.
For the school only.
And what's the
correct.
percentage for the church?
The church, the array that's proposed is going to cover roughly 100% of their usage.
So would it be possible to mount the arrays on top of the existing unoccupied flat roofs and then make your runs to your meter from there?
No, there's no more usage over here that we can. There's no flat roofs. This
Well, I'm talking about on the building, on the south corner of the school. Can you put more
On this
solar
one
up
here?
there? Correct.
No, we couldn't use, actually, we looked to put it here for this system just to cover more of their usage, but we didn't have any structural information, so we couldn't see if the roof would support it. And it was a solid ceiling, and we didn't want to take any core samples to get to the structure.
Why?
We weren't sure what was underneath there, if there was lead paint or anything, so we didn't want to take that risk of opening anything up. We were able to get to the structure of this part of the school, which is why we used that area. Because we would have used the rest of the roof to feed the school if we could have, to get up to 100% of their usage to maximize the savings for the school as well as the church.
So is this the only place you considered putting this array?
On this property, yes.
There's no plan B.
There was no plan B. This was the best place to put it.
Mr. Lanzafama will be talking about this area, but to give a proffer, he thinks that's going to be more exposed to additional residences and areas if you move it out to generally the northerly direction. Planning testimony on a comparison.
Right,
of
but
those two.
we're talking to the solar expert here. So
I'm just
that's why I'm more interested in from the actual mechanics of it than necessarily the planning perspective.
Fair enough.
Any other questions for the switchers? Anyone from the audience have any questions regarding the testimony?
I don't know if this is the proper time.
Come on down,
Um,
just identify yourself.
My name is Jeff Feld, 11 Alexander Lane, Short Hills, New Jersey.
Question.
The question is, when did someone realize they had to come to this board?
Wait. You have to ask the question of the witness.
I guess because the application is coming from the solar companies, and that's what
You just took my question from it.
What?
You just took my next question from it.
is coming from it. When did they realize they had to come to this board? And the reason I'm asking this question is that the township committee has passed an ordinance on first reading where they're allowing the use of these carport, solar carports to be a permitted use. That'll be second reading in July. I'm just trying to figure out when this, because if you drive by, the area is fenced in. It seems like pillings were railings do this. When did someone realize they had to come to this board for approvals? And the only thing I've heard so far, the approval is not the use that you do to solar, is now the height. And I'm just trying to figure out, when did someone realize they had to come to the area? Because we've been hearing about all these other projects in New Jersey. Is this the first time they had to come to a land use board to get approvals? We do these other projects, whether it's a school, the yeshiva, or the other one.
Ask.
I'm sorry, I was talking.
I think you get the gist, right?
You got the gist of what I was saying.
Yes. So we were not aware that we had to come here until after we dug the holes and we called for the inspections to look at the open holes before we filled them.
So what did you file for exactly?
We filed.
Just a building permit?
We filed two separate applications, one for the roof, one for the carport. And they were approved and sent back to us. Amergy is not, this is our first carport we're doing. We've done all rooftops, which is why we have a carport company that's coming in and installing, because that's what they do. So we were
So
not.
what triggered the stop work?
When we called, when the inspector came out to look at the holes to give us permission to fill them. That's when we were told that they were not aware that it was carport.
So you talked about, 12 projects with the Archdiocese?
Yes,
Okay. Of those 12 projects, how many are carport?
they're all rooftop.
They're all rooftops. So this is the only carport project? Are you familiar with other carport projects involving churches?
Not personally involved. I've seen many carports in colleges that I've been to, in churches, commercial. I mean, I've seen them, I've been under them, but I've never installed them up until now.
So what was actually submitted then? Did you submit it as a carport, or was it just submitted?
No, it was submitted as a carport with all the designs and everything, and the structures and the foundations and everything.
Please swear our board secretary.
You swear testimony you just made the truth, or truth, not the truth?
Yes.
So obviously they have more issues than just a carport here, because you have side yard buffers and all that stuff. So at what point was that recognized that?
This was recognized, this was actually submitted for, it came in as solar panel installed, blah, 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 solar panels on carport. And when we took this in, they took it in as solar panels, and I don't typically review rooftop solar panels. So it's why.
Yeah, the carport part of it was sort of not.
It didn't really, it wasn't 100% clear that they were constructing the carport. So they just saw solar panels, and there was some, when they dug the footings, when they called in for the inspection for the footings is when the person who has the phone said, couldn't understand why they were calling for footings for solar panels, and that's when we discovered that they really should have come to the board. It was a conditional use, it doesn't meet the conditions of the conditional use, and it
For
also
church.
for a church in residential district, and also issues with height, as well as.
A very substantial side setback buffer.
So that's what it is.
Chairman, the plans were the plans showing a carport, but it occurred, and we're here to fix it.
Yeah.
It occurred. They were out there with building permits.
Okay, no further questions?
Okay,
So
I think we're gonna, Father Larry has a comment on the location, or no? We'll have Mike first. Okay, we'll try, in between, we'll try to address that issue of whether it could be moved. If they could talk, so we can address that further. If we could have Mike sworn in.
You swear from testimony about to give in tonight's proceedings the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. My name is Michael Lanzafama. That's Lanzafama. I'm a licensed professional engineer, land surveyor and planner, licensed in the state of New Jersey. I'm a principal with the firm of Casey and Keller Incorporated, 258 Main Street, Millburn, New Jersey. I've testified before this board and the planning board on numerous occasions.
Okay, Chairman, just for the record, this handout is A1. I think I mentioned that, but I wasn't sure, so I wanted to make sense. I did, and Mike, you have A2, which is a partial landscape plan. We'll talk about that. Okay, Mr. Wanzafama, you had a chance to review the application in light of the relief that's necessary.
Yes, I have. And
Give the board the benefit of your.
So Mr. Lonzafama, are you testifying just as a planner tonight?
planner, and I guess I can give some insights as an engineer as well.
Okay, thank you.
As Rick pointed out, the property in question is the St. Rose of Lima Catholic Church. It's been at this location for more than 100 years. It existed long before the zoning that currently is in place existed. As a matter of fact, the church was originally moved from Springfield in 1880 as a wood frame structure, and then the brick church was built in 1909. The property is surrounded by single-family residential zones across Short Hills Avenue. Also adjoining the property to the east is the Short Hills Garden Apartments. So you have a substantial portion of that property line that is common to the Short Hills Garden Apartments. The property is a triangular, irregularly shaped property. Frontage along Millburn Avenue is over 633 feet, and Short Hills Avenue, the frontage is over 949 linear feet. The property also makes the bend around to Pine Terrace. The existing structures on the property include the church, rectory, school, mausoleum. It also has a cemetery located on it. There's a paved parking area immediately to the north of the rectory that accommodates about 168 parking spaces. As you can see from sheet 2 is a blow-up of the location of the solar panels. It shows the location of the solar panels being constructed within those angular parking spots in the central portion of the parking lot. The structure consists of 5 sections of solar panels. The carport is 135 feet 4 inches long. It's 45 feet 6 inches wide.
Sorry,
and
how many feet wide?
45 feet 6 inches wide.
Thank you.
And 20.7 feet high. The location of the panels is oriented to the existing parking field to take advantage of access and to maintain the parking for the church and its operations. To speak briefly about reorienting the panels and the potential impact that might have on the church facility, if you look at sheet 1, go back to sheet 1 for a second, where you can see the overall complex. You see that the building that is immediately to the south of the panels is actually the rectory. And there's access to the garages along that facade of the rectory. There's also a garage located to the rear, and the driveway that exists just to the north of the rectory is also the access to the cemetery. So repositioning the solar panels, turning them 90 degrees with a north-south orientation would potentially impact some of the access to those garages as well as to the cemetery itself. According to my conversations with the applicant and their attorney and Mr. Skolnick, this seemed to be the most appropriate location for the solar panels from a planning perspective as well as a utilization of the existing parking field. The variances that are required are the minimum side yard buffer to a residential property. 25 feet is required. We have 11 feet 2 inches. So the proposed variance is 13 feet, 10 inches. This violates section 606.2 D1J of the conditional use standards. Now, what's important to realize here is the orientation of the panels actually pulls away from that property line. So if you took a line parallel to that easterly property line and offset it 25 feet, the area of the panels that are actually violating the ordinance is only 192 square feet of this overall array. So it's a relatively small area that actually encroaches into that setback.
Mike, that's a conditional use standard for houses of worship?
That is correct.
Okay.
Also, under the standards for houses of worship, structures are required to be set back 100 feet from the street lines. The panels, as they're proposed, are being set back 42.2 feet at its closest point on the northern end of the structure. On the southern end, it's about 45.9 feet. So this would require a variance of 57.8 feet. And that again is a combination of the conditional use standard, which is 606.2 D1G, as well as accessory structures located on a corner lot, that's 609.5A1, which further states that accessory structures have to match the required front yard setback. So we feel that that variance is also required. And finally, as we've discussed for a while at the previous witness, that the height of the panels requires a 2.7-foot variance at the extreme tips of the panel, and that's 606.2E3C. Now, to support those variances, what we have to look at is the positive criteria first and then the negative criteria. In the positive criteria, you have the fact that St. Rose's Church has been there for over 100 years and is considered an inherently beneficial use in and of itself. And not only is that considered an inherently beneficial use, solar panels are now considered under the MLUL as inherently beneficial uses. So the simple application of the fact that these are inherently beneficial uses presumptively proves the positive criteria for the uses and the location of the structure. So it also advances certain purposes of the MLULA to encourage municipal action to guide appropriate use or development of lands in a manner that will promote the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. As you all know, one of your goals in your master plan, Goal 6, is to make Millburn more sustainable, to encourage private properties to become more sustainable. And that's exactly what we're doing here. And N under the MLUL is to promote utilization of renewable energy sources. And as to the negative criteria, we have the two-pronged test that we have to pass, showing that the variance, if granted, would not substantially be detrimental to the public good. And the public good that we often look at in this instance are the adjoining properties and how those adjoining properties are potentially impacted by the location of this structure. And as to Short Hills Gardens to our east, as you can see, the area that we are adjacent to with the structure is actually an open area that adjoins garages and parking areas. So it would not negatively impact those properties. As to the properties immediately across Short Hills Avenue, what we are proposing is what has been marked as A2, and that's a supplemental landscape plan to introduce 10 shade trees along our frontage to help screen from across the street those solar panels. So
plants in the right of way,
they would be right along the frontage. they could be up right in the, just over the right of way or along the right of way. We would certainly have to talk to the forester about that, but I don't see that. You could see the 2 darker green trees are existing trees, and we would try and supplement that streetscape by introducing 10 linden shade trees.
Are there power lines on that side?
No, they're on the far side. So, so besides that, we heard about the height of the structure being important to ensure that vehicular traffic didn't interfere with the structure. And as I said earlier, we advanced goal 6 of the master plan, which requires private development to incorporate sustainable design practices. So that's pretty much our presentation with regard to planning and engineering. I know there's much discussion about possible alternate locations. We did look at and ask the question, well, what if? What if we moved it further to the north? We felt that was totally inappropriate because it really put it much closer to more single-family residential houses immediately adjacent. The location that we have proposed really ensures that it would have, in my mind, minimal impact on the adjoining property to the east. And we believe that the mitigation we're proposing with the supplemental landscaping we can safely say that it would not substantially impact those property owners.
Okay, Mike, there's another conception on the positive criteria. When you have that D3 conditional use, that's the Coventry Square standard, where their courts are asking for testimony. Does the site remain appropriate despite the deviation? It's another way to look at it. Does the
Sure,
site remain appropriate?
absolutely.
And the real focus is on the deviations. Do you have a planning opinion on that?
Absolutely, that this site can still operate as a house of worship. The parking lot can still function appropriately, and the solar panels are only a benefit to not only the church, but to all of us in general, as we move towards electric vehicles, electric charging stations, et cetera, et cetera. So I can certainly say without any hesitation that this can happen without any substantial detriment.
Okay, and look, there's going to be some visibility. That's a fact.
Absolutely.
You know, and you need that to have solar power and renewables. So there's some detriment. You feel that the mitigating steps are reasonable under the circumstances here?
Yes, and the key word is substantial detriment, and that's not the case here, in my mind.
Going back to your positive and negative criteria, I don't necessarily agree with how you're describing it. While solar panels are beneficial, houses of worship are beneficial, I don't think we're here for either one of those tonight. We're here for how they're being mounted.
Well, you're here for the solar panels themselves too, and how they play into the site and how they can work with the site and the use
Well,
itself.
if they're mounted on the structure, would be
If they were mounted,
elsewhere on the property. If we're not mounted on this structure here that you're proposing, would we be here tonight?
if they occurred within the parking lot, I would say yes. If we met the setbacks but still occurred within the parking lot, I believe, I could be wrong, but I thought we would have to be here.
So let me ask you this. Explain the positive and negative criteria of mounting 20 feet up in the air on a big structure like this.
Remember, that 20 foot is at the very tip of the goal.
Is it 20 feet or not?
It is.
So explain that. So explain, what I'm getting at here is I'm trying to look at what we see in town, okay? And I don't know where any of these structures exist other than the Short Hills Mall. So
can I jump in just for 1 second? So, and I think Mr. Skolnick sort of touched upon this in his opening remarks. You know, this is not your, typical application in that here we have an inherently beneficial use of church seeking to utilize solar carports, which is an inherently beneficial use under municipal land use law. So you have a double header, you have 2 inherently beneficial uses. And the rule is that those uses, if this was a prohibited use and you were putting a McDonald's in a residential zone, and you have to meet the positive criteria and the negative criteria. Here, they have two inherently beneficial uses, and the presumption is that they meet the positive criteria because they're inherently beneficial, okay? Whether you like it or you don't like it, whether it meets with what you see in town elsewhere, automatically meets inherently beneficial standard. But it's even stronger, I believe, for the applicant, because it's also, unlike my McDonald's example, conditionally permitted in the zone. So it's not a D, it would not be a D1 case in any event. It would be a D3 case, and under D3 cases, conditional use, boards of adjustment to look at those cases take into account the fact that the governing body felt that that particular use was appropriate in that particular zone, provided the applicant can meet the standards or the conditions for that use. So the burden that an applicant would normally have for a D1 variance, even for an inherently beneficial use, in meeting the positive criteria is even, I believe, legally lessened because you're dealing with a conditionally permitted use. And I think the point is that you need to look at, and I believe Mr. Alonso-Famadas answered the question of Mr. Skolnick on this point, the particular deviations, and to do those deviations under the negative criteria cause the substantial detriment to the public good and substantial impairment to the zone plan and zoning ordinance. And it's a balancing. So, I tell boards all the time that if the applicant is seeking a bus depot for school buses, a bus depot for school buses is inherently beneficial in New Jersey, okay? But it's maybe here an inherently beneficial use. If you have a trauma center for brain injuries as inherently beneficial uses, it would be much higher than the school bus depot. And the reason why I'm giving you that analogy is that all these cases involve a balancing in the end of the positive and negative criteria. And you have to determine whether on balance, right, not only under a SECA balancing test that the positives outweigh, that there's no substantial detriment, but also that the particular deviation would be substantially detrimental. So I don't know if that's helpful or not, but that's what the law is in terms of dealing with not one, but two inherently beneficial uses in the context of looking for a conditional use at the particular deviation.
So just one question, Rob. You're not saying that the inherently beneficial, double inherently beneficial use trumps everything else. We still are able to calculate, ourselves, make our own decision and determination
Correct.
whether the substantial detriment outweighs the double inherently beneficial use.
Yes, there's always still a balancing. The board has certainly the power, even if it's inherently beneficial and it presumptively, and presumptions can be rebutted, of course, that presumptively meets the positive criteria. That doesn't mean that you don't do your job.
Getting back to me doing my job.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
This is what you are offering to us, okay? And while the use is wonderful, and I think the intent's wonderful, my question is this the best option? Okay, so when we look at this here, can some of this array be put elsewhere to either minimize the size of this? I mean, because
We don't have another spot for it. We heard testimony that the roof was not acceptable, and we don't think there's another good location on the ground for it. We are offering mitigating factors. Rob referred to the SECA balancing test. You look at the positives, the negatives. You say, hey, are there any conditions we can add? So in preparation, we said, look, there's going to be some detriment because we're not 100 feet back, we're 50 or 42.2, right? We're about half, but we can do some mitigation, reasonable mitigation, and we're agreeable to that condition. We don't.
But the trees, we don't even know if that's reasonable mitigation. So I'm not sure those can go there.
Why wouldn't they be able to go there?
I walked.
So what?
I walked the site today with my landscape architect.
Who says we can't plant in a right of way?
I don't know, the state.
No.
Somebody could say we're expanding the road, and a right of way is a right to expand the road. So under the very rare possibility that the road is ultimately widened at that location, which is pretty nil. Whoever owns the right of way could take the trees down. But we own the property. It's within the property line, Mike?
It's right on the property.
Right on the property. So we would go to the governing body if we had to and let them know. But this is, it's tight, but we can get them there. But a right of way doesn't, we're not aware of any title restriction on planting trees in the right of way. I don't think you're correct, Chairman, on that issue, that there's a prohibition.
It's not 100% slam dunk is my point.
We're not aware of anything that would prevent it. So we're
Well,
not aware of
I-
anything that would prevent.
I would wonder if
planting that.
if the utility company would like to see a tree that grows to 60 feet, that if it fell, would knock out the pole on the other side.
Well, that you could say that about the existing trees along the street now.
Well, those are existing, correct? Do they want more planting?
Chairman, we're here to present a
We,
reasonable
we,
plan.
are-
which
we
believe-
offered this as what we thought would be a good way to mitigate the vista for the people across the street. If the board doesn't feel this is appropriate, we could withdraw it.
Are those trees evergreens?
No, they're linden. You would see the panels about 5 months out of the year.
Chairman, I do note it does not appear there's any neighbors here.
I'd just like to understand something more about the second flat roof of the school. And so what I heard was that there were no existing structural drawings for that roof, and that there was concern, maybe I'm not sure, and that there was concern that making a determination about whether that roof could be used might open some additional cost or issues. Is that?
I think that's what, I don't know that it would prevent us from coming here, but Frank, if you can
Well, I mean,
clarify
I guess the
that.
question
Yes,
was.
Come on back up.
There were no
Commercial light,
structures.
please.
Come on back up.
There were no structurals at all. However, the area where we mounted the panels had a drop ceiling. So our structural engineer was able to use a ladder, get up and take his measurements of the actual structure above the drop ceiling. This other building, the other flat roof, no plans, and it was solid. There was no drop ceiling. We could not access the actual structure.
But you could have a structural engineer come in and check that?
We'd have to cut it open. That was the issue.
Was sheetrock?
I'm just trying to
I think it was
understand a little
plaster.
better
I'm
why
not
the-
positive. I think it was,
Can we speak one at a
no,
time?
I'm sorry. I think it was plaster, but I'm not positive. And they were worried about how old it was and lead being up there and creating another issue. Because like I said, we could have used that roof we would have used that roof in addition to the existing one for the school, not the church.
It would have been in addition.
It would have been
So
additional. We
you-
still would have been looking to do a carport to cover the church itself's usage.
Right, because you're not getting 100% of the energy bill
Right, but you're covering
covered.
40% of the school versus 100% of the school.
We'd still, what I think he's trying to say is, even if we could use the roof, the other roof, that would only get us to 100% on the school. We'd still be here for the carport because there's more energy to be saved. There's more inherently beneficial to be gathered.
Did you guys look at the roofs of the other buildings on the site?
Yeah, they're slate roofs. We can't install solar on slate because on a pitched roof, we actually have to penetrate the shingles, and you'd just be cracking them. If it was an asphalt shingle roof, it would be just like a residential install. We could penetrate, go into the rafters to secure it. On a flat roof, it's a ballasted system, so there's no penetrations in the roof.
Where are some town that have structures like this? They were.
Frank's not gonna know.
Oh, yeah.
Any questions? Any further questions?
Yeah, so, Mike, how many parking spaces do you say are on the site?
I believe 168.
Okay, and of the 168, how many are gonna be covered by this carport?
2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22. About 24.
No loss of spaces.
No.
And was there any consideration of having this carport maybe either moved to another location, maybe closer somewhat to Pine Terrace with less deviation from the ordinance requirements, or even just splitting it up and having two separate arrays?
We didn't consider the separation, but we did consider possibly repositioning them to a location in somewhat to the north and east. And as you can see, it would then put the arrays much closer to the single-family homes on Winding Way. And you would still need a deviation for the setback to Short Hills Avenue, and you would just move the houses that were being impacted. So.
Can you do the carport just one row, not double row?
I couldn't answer that.
You could, yes.
Right, you can do that. So doesn't that help your setback problem? I'm looking at the deviations here for which you need relief. Putting aside the height for a second.
So if you eliminated the panels closest to Short Hills Avenue, and you're saying place them perhaps in the area immediately to the north, yes, you could reduce, you could increase the setback and reduce the extent of the deviation.
Same number of panels overall
Correct,
to get the energy savings.
correct.
So I guess the reason you have them, why don't you come on up, sorry. So I guess the reason you have them in this this V shape is number one, to get east-west exposure and for water drainage. I mean, is that
Correct.
pretty much the story there? If you were to cover the spots along the back of the property, okay, as just, like starting there and then along the back, where you just have a single-sided, obviously it would be canted away from the residence. Could it be done that way?
We'd have to look at it structurally. Another reason we selected this too, it was one straight row of parking spots. Now, if you start going to the back, as you can see, you're gonna have 3 spots here, then a cutout, and then 4 here. It's gonna be like sawtooth. So, the other reason that we chose this, it was just one straight. It had the middle island where the footings are going. So it was closest to the electric. It was the ideal spot that's on this property for it.
Couldn't you reconfigure those couple spaces there so it's not sawtooth? Making it one straight line?
Not really. If you look at, you have the refuse area, there's a garage here that needs to be accessed. There's garage doors on the rectory, just on the north side of the rectory. And then this is the access into the cemetery.
Yeah, I'm not.
We would end up losing some parking, I believe. I haven't laid it all out. I couldn't answer.
Or how about the length along, except the residential area there?
Here?
Correct. Doing it there as well, where you would have just single-sided, once again, it would be angled away from the residence. Obviously, it's not quite the same exposure, but it's pretty close.
So you would still have the 25-foot buffer setback variance required. You might eliminate the 100 feet from Short Hills Avenue.
Right.
We'd have to study it, we'd have to take a look at it.
And even cutting this in half, we're still not gonna meet the 100.
Well, my point is this, if you were to put them along the back, you wouldn't have to have 20 feet up in the air either, because it's really not an egress and egress problem that you have right now. I mean, right now, you're in probably the busiest part of your parking lot.
We could bring it down. It can be brought down. It's not preferable.
Well, no, I'm saying your existing location, I would not bring it down. Because, once again, bringing fire trucks in there and it's an apparatus, I'm sure they got that close to the building. But if you're along that backside over there, you could probably get rid of the height deviation also, as you just be having regular cars under them as opposed to emergency vehicles.
We're also gonna have, I can't tell from there, but we're also gonna have probably tremendous shading issues. This is all tree line.
Well, you're obviously be in front of that. I mean, you have a fence along the whole property line. There's fencing along the entire.
Right, but the trees will shade the solar panels and it's gonna cut the production drastically.
For what exposure?
I'd have to look at the height of the trees. I know just from being there, the trees they're tall trees, they're all lined on the back.
But that's not gonna limit your western exposure. I mean, maybe eastern a little bit, but your panels will be sort of tilted to western exposure.
They would, yeah, because they do shade the existing parking spaces. I'd have to look at the height of the trees but there will be substantial shading that would take place on it. Because instead of doing cantilever, then.
Well, I mean,
as you said,
100% is a nice thing. I mean, but, realistically, you're not guaranteeing 100%.
Well, we can't guarantee 100% because the weather
Right.
is
So-
an
so, I
anomaly.
mean-
I mean, we could produce more than 100%, we could produce less. It all
Right. So, I
depends
mean,
on what the
like I said,
weather is.
That's sort of an arbitrary number as to what the output of this thing is anyway.
Well, it's arbitrary, but when we design a system, we use a site called pvwatts.org, and what they do is they track the weather for over 100 years. We plug in the address and it pulls the closest weather station. Then we put in the pitch of the panels, the direction the panels are facing, the size of the system, and just based on historical weather for the last 100 years, it tells us on an average weather day how much how much electric that solar system will produce. And that's the report that we actually have to send into PSE&G along with our system sizes to show that the system is not going to produce more than what their usage was. So we don't choose what I'm getting at is we don't choose a random size. So, and that website is based on minimum shading throughout the year. So if you start getting shading involved, you're only going down, you're not going up. And keep in mind, in the middle of the summer, the sun is directly overhead. So you may not get that much shading in the middle of summer, but as we get into the fall and the winter, the sun is now more elliptical and it shades quite a bit.
How often do you clean these things?
We don't clean them. The tilt and the rain that we have in this part of the country is enough to keep the panels clean. And it's even through pollen, even when there's snow up on there, the panels are still going to produce electric. It uses the UV lighting of the sun, so it's not going to produce as much as if they weren't covered, but it'll still produce.
What about noise?
Noise?
Yes.
No, there's no noise. There's no noise, there's no moving parts, there's no maintenance to a solar system. The maintenance is the inverters. They need to be replaced every 15 years or so.
Is a system can be monitored off-site?
Yes.
And how does that happen?
Well, there's a website, so you have web-based of the inverters. You can track it at any time. We track our systems, we monitor it, we give our customers access to it. So you can go on at any given moment and see what the system's producing at that moment. And then you can run reports, what did it produce yesterday, last week, last month. So, and it also alerts us if it's not working properly.
Any other questions?
Earlier on, you mentioned about LED lights from dusk to dawn. Is that going to be basically on throughout the night, and how is that under the panel? I mean,
It'll be under the panel in the middle, facing down, so it's just gonna light up the parking spots.
What's the need for those dusk to dawn?
Just for safety concerns for the church, to have the parking lot lit.
Is the current parking lot lit dusk to dawn?
They currently have lamp posts.
Right.
I don't know what time. And we have 4 or 5 lamp posts throughout.
So this will be in addition to the lamp posts?
2 lamp posts, 2 or 3 were taken out because they were in the median where the footings are going. So this will replace them.
And they're distant away from the homes surrounding?
Yeah, they'll be up underneath the structure and facing straight down.
Any further questions?
Chairman, can we have 2 minutes to caucus and?
Yeah, real quick. Anyone have any questions in the audience for Mr. Leslie Palmer? No? Okay. Go ahead.
Would you mind if we took a break for 2 minutes?
Go ahead, 2 minutes, go.
Went outside. So we reiterate that we can make the overall canopy lower in the current location. We don't think that really makes sense, but it can come down. That would remove one of the variances. But there's just less flexibility in the current location to bring it down from 20 feet, 0.7 to the 18. Father Larry would like to say a couple of words. We're going to ask for a vote tonight. And Father Larry would like to address the board on that issue, if you may.
Sure.
Thank you for your time. When we decided to do this, the decision was based on what would be the best thing for St. Rose of Lima Church without negating our responsibility to the community. As our demographics continue to change and as some of our heavy hitters continue either to move to other places or to go home to God, we have to find ways in which to sustain ourselves. We cannot allow people to keep coming, putting their hands in the pocket when there is a way to prevent this. As the Pope has written in terms of sustainability and things of that nature is something I personally believe in and that we believe in. In choosing the site location, it is the most feasible place. There was an island there, and it does not disrupt any traffic flow between parents picking up their children after school, which is a safety issue, or prevent us from using our cemetery or the access of the priest in the residence. The panels on the school are only at 40%, but they only function as the school. When the term church kept being used, it's not the church. The old convent that's attached to the school is a benefit of the panels on the school. The panels cannot be put anywhere else on the property due to the slate roofs. I have looked at that. I would prefer that. The only option we had was to build this carport and put the panels on top. That is why we chose that. We looked at other parts of the parking lot. The trees, and you're welcome to come and take a look, the trees will shade an entire car. Those are preferential parking spaces. So if they're shaded, the sun cannot do its job to energize the panels. To move it anywhere else would still bring us the same problem, having to put up more trees or other possibilities. I've listened, I hear your concerns, and I am very grateful. However, I did inform the church that a decision would be made tonight, so I have to go with whatever you decide. The vote has to be tonight. We have delayed this long enough. We have actually, hopefully temporarily, lost some parishioners to other churches because of the way it's set up. They cannot get in, and this has been their home for years. It is my hope that we can conclude this, hopefully move forward, but either way, I have to conclude it one way or the other to bring people back home to their parish, because the elderly cannot walk as far as they have to get around this big structure. So that's all I have to say, and I want to thank you so much for taking the time to listen and, to be honest, for your pointed questions, because they're valid. That is your job, and you have yours, and I also have to do mine, so thank you very much.
Father.
Yes, sir.
If you indulge me. With any zoning hearing, it's in most cases, as I'm sure Mr. Skolnick will tell you, a bit of a give and take.
Mhm.
And I think for you to force a vote this evening is only selling yourself short. That if there is a way to create some sort of compromise, or there is a way, and I'm not saying that it's necessary, it may fall in your favor, but to listen to comment from the board first before you make that choice. And if there's a way to temporarily open your lot, if it doesn't go your way, maybe something that would be beneficial to everyone, your parishioners, as well as achieving your goal. Whether it isn't this way or some sort of version of this, I find it hard to believe that the firm isn't creative enough to maybe come up with something else. But it would behoove you to listen to what we have to say and then make that decision. Because I would hate for you to force a vote tonight and it not go in your favor, and you're that close to maybe getting it.
I'm more than happy to listen. To be honest with you, sir, this has been delayed for almost a month, and it has caused a lot of consternation. I have to bring just a little bit of history that is probably of no concern to the board. Before my arrival, there was an elevator put in. It took 5 years for that.
That came in front of us as well.
Yes, I cannot do that to these people. We are preparing, and all the proper forms are being, to rip up the front steps of our church. There are liability and everything else. All of that has been gone through the application process. There's only so much construction that can be going on. To delay this to July is just not feasible. But I take your advice. I will wait to hear your comments before I make a final decision. So thank you very much.
Very well. And Mr. Skolnick, obviously, you talked to your clients about adopting the rest of the cotton, that all means a decision by the board, however it goes.
Correct. There's a lot of steel that's been ordered because of what happened in the building department. Nobody's fault, but there's a lot of steel has been fabricated for this project that's sitting out there.
I don't think you answered my question. Okay.
Well, I advised my client the best I could, obviously, and I'm glad that Josh.
And for the record, I advise mine as well, so.
Right.
Thank you.
I'm glad that Josh was here as well.
With that, is there any comment from the audience regarding this case? Now is the time, if you have a comment, feel free to move forward. In that case, I'll close the public portion of the application. Board members, your thoughts?
I'll start off by saying that I understand the request and the need for this and where this is going. I am concerned that there is in its current iteration, the current location, the current everything else, I am concerned that there is a substantial detriment that is not, at all, mitigated by the inherently beneficial use of both the church and, having solar panels. I think in particular, the 57.8, that variance is just, it's a substantial detriment. That's my personal view, my concern.
Thank you. Please comment.
Look, I share my colleague's concern. I'm very torn on this though, because I do think that it is inherently beneficial to have this kind of structure and to have solar energy supply the church's energy needs. But I feel like there are alternatives here that could be, to the chairman's point, that could be reached. And it may be that for whatever reason, the church needs to move forward tonight. I think that's unfortunate, but I think there are ways this could be done. I'm concerned that in the current format, that the standard hasn't been met.
So when I first saw this, right, what went through my mind was why. Not so much from the sustainability standpoint, covering the bill, I get that. I think that's absolutely fantastic to use renewable energy. But why in terms of this absolutely magnificent structure and having this sort of bizarre piece of technology put right in front of it? And I thought to myself, is that really the best way to do it? I think it's the easiest way, but I'm not sure it's the best way. And achieving 100% coverage in the optimal circumstances, I think is wonderful. Though, if you achieve 85 and get it to be maybe a little bit more aesthetically pleasing structure, a little lower, maybe a little bit more masked, I think would be the ultimate win. So the way it currently stands, let's say here's some compelling arguments from my colleagues. I don't think I would support it the way it looks right now.
Chairman, I think Father Larry understands, or Mr. Kudre has explained to him, that we require 5 out of 7 votes for an approval tonight.
Correct.
Okay, so I'm going to leave it to Mr. Kudre to talk to his client.
So I can't force you to come back, but I'd love you to.
I'm Amergy. could you squeeze us on, I won't be here, but could you squeeze us on July 1st?
Yeah, make sure you guys are all on the same page.
Okay, I'm just trying to present all the facts.
Right.
I will tell you that Shanju and Gary are not gonna be here on July 1st.
Okay, will two of you be here July 1st?
Yeah, they'll be here.
Then you have a full board.
Okay. So Josh, I'll have a full board on July 1st.
Well, five.
Let's.
Two alternates.
Virginia.
Right, you can listen to it, take it. Yeah, I'm just make sure she has.
We appreciate your patience. to try and Okay, can we carry?
I'm sorry?
We'll only have 6 on July 1st.
We're only gonna have 6.
We will
That's
have
right.
6 on July 5.
Yeah,
We'll have
and
six. We'll only have 6.
six, yeah.
We will
So you
only
need
have
5
6.
out of 6,
We'll
but
only have 6 on the 1st.
I still think I would take that deal.
So for the record, Joshua Kudre, law firm Sill Cummins and Gross, on behalf of the church. Yeah, we will please announce a carry to the next available meeting, which I understand is July 1st, same time in this meeting place, no further notice required.
That's correct. As Attorney mentioned, there'll be no further notice. When we moved any plans that will be presented will be posted on the website as well as the town hall.
With one, sorry, Rob, go ahead.
Go first.
I was going to say probably with one exception, depending on what plan modifications may or may not come to be, if there's an extent of variances that may be modified or created, necessitated.
By virtue of
Correct.
the modification.
Correct.
That's understood. In terms of the timeframe, I think we should just, let's lock that down now. What's the minimum number of days you would need, Eileen, to take a look at any modified plans should the applicant go in that direction?
For the July 1st meeting. Friday.
This Friday.
Friday,
Right.
18 days prior.
Friday this week. Is there a way that the applicant can do it with 7 days?
Yeah, I mean, as long as you're not gonna have to.
I think the modifications are not gonna be major. They're gonna be
That's
typical.
what I'm thinking. I'm
Typical.
saying because the board has already heard a lot of testimony, the public's heard a lot of testimony. I think 7 days, as long as you're comfortable with that, that's it.
We appreciate it. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks.
White, yes.
Correct, just announced it, it's good, this application is gonna be carried to, meeting the Board of Adjustment on Monday, July 1st, 2024, 7 PM in this room, no further notice to be provided by the applicant.
Okay, I won't be here on the 1st, but there were no members of the public. We'll do our best to get you something in advance of then, and if not, we'll figure out the dates.
Either way. Thank you. As Mr. Spalding is also counsel on this next application, I'm going to give just a couple minutes to get it together. Sorry, yeah, we'll get it shown too.
What's that?
Okay, lastly this evening, we have calendar 398724, which is Paper Mill Playhouse. We will not hear any new testimony after 10:30. So you've got till like slightly after that, so see what you can do.
Is that new witnesses after 10:30?
No new witnesses, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Chairman, I am still Richard Skolnick, representing the Paper Mill Playhouse. For the record, it's block 1304, lots 13, 14, and 15. I do have a couple of minutes of introduction to try to set the table. The addresses are 20 and 22 Brookside. The Township of Millburn owns lots 13 and 14, and the mayor has executed the application that's before you as the owner of those two lots. Those two lots are located in the CD Cultural District Zone, and Paper Mill leases those lots from the township based upon a lease going back to 2008. There's a 35-year term on that lease with 4 potential 10-year extensions. So it's 35 plus 40 years, a 75-year long lease running through the year 2083. Paper Mill recently purchased lot 15 in January of 2023, and that's in the R6 zone. And there was a residence, as everyone is aware, on that lot. It had been used as a private parking lot during Paper Mill performances. Paper Mill has raised that house at 20 Brookside in August of 2023, and it's reached a tentative agreement with the township where the township is now going to purchase lot 15 from Paper Mill. There was a vote of the township committee on that on April 2nd of this year, and there have been drafts back and forth. Presumably, after that purchase, the township would own all 3 lots. We're here for site plan approval. The actual building footprint expansions that we're seeking are quite modest. There's no expansion of the theater itself. The seating is going to remain the same. The proposal is to expand the lobby area of the footprint by about 2,600 square feet and the carriage house by 1,670 square feet. So we're talking about 4,260 square feet in the context of a 3.27 acre parcel or 142,000 square feet. So we're talking about overall, even though there's a lot going on, it's a 3% increase in overall building footprint. We remain compliant in terms of building coverage standards in both the CD and the R6 zone. Getting ready for this application, I submitted my usual Open Public Records Act request to get any prior resolutions. There was a bit of a surprise in the response. There was a 1992 resolution that said the carriage house was limited to 65 patrons of the theater, that the carriage house could only be used for patrons of the theater. That was in the 1992 resolution. Those conditions had relief in a year 2000 resolution for 5 years, but they had sort of faded away in time. Nobody knew about them. So part of this application is to lift those restrictions. And you'll hear from Mike Stotts, the executive director, on why Paper Mill wants to use the carriage house in a different way and make better usage out of this community asset. So we are seeking to have the 1992 resolution amended in addition to the site plan approval and the variances. We have some D6 height variances. Those are relatively minor. The architect will talk about those. We have D1 variances for the use. We took what I'll call a worst case situation. We called the carriage house a separate principal use. We didn't want to have a struggle whether it's principal or accessory. We called it a principal use. It's not permitted in the CD zone or the R6 zone, so we do need use variance relief to expand the carriage house. It's also a second principal use, even though it's on the one campus. So we have that sort of relief in front of the board. There have been no material physical improvements to the paper mill since the 1980s. That's 40+ years. As you know, and as you heard me say, this lease runs through 2083. So we believe that this is an exciting application that represents a real investment, a material investment into a significant community asset that's going to bring really the paper mill into the 21st century. We're going to call our first witness, Mike Stotts. After that, we have Don Kim, the architect. Then we'll have Adam Westenberger, the civil engineer, and Rich Keller on the variance relief. We'll try to do it all tonight if we can. We'll see how it goes. With that, Mr. Stotts, can I have Ms. Warren?
Just raise your right hand, please. You swear from testimony about to give in tonight's proceeding be the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Your name for the record and spell your name.
Michael Stotts, Stotts.
Thank you.
Okay. Mike, could you just tell us your title and your affiliation with Paper Mill?
Sure, I'm the executive director. I've been with the company for about 5.5 years. My past experience has been as the executive director and managing director of a few theaters where I've done building projects, not unlike this one.
And you report to the Board of Trustees?
I do indeed. I'm here tonight with my business partner, Mark Hobie, who is the producing artistic director. We're the current stewards of this building and this property, but we report to the Board of Directors.
And you're totally familiar with all aspects of the renovation plans?
I am.
Okay. Could you just tell us a little bit about the background of Paper Mill so we have it on the record?
Sure. We're celebrating our 85th anniversary. I think everyone in the room probably knows that Paper Mill is a major cultural institution in Millburn. We were founded, like I said, 85 years ago. And during that period, this last 85 years, we have had enormous success developing and producing musical theater, straight plays for a long time, but most recently musical theater. Our current budget is around $30 million a year. And over the last several years, we have been developing shows that have found life after Paper Mill on Broadway. Most recently, The Great Gatsby, which premiered at our theater last fall and opened on Broadway just a few months ago and won a Tony Award last night.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. We have about 175,000 people cross through our doors every year. Plus another 40,000 who participate in our education programs. We have very significant education programming on site and in the new Paper Mill Studios, which we opened right before the pandemic in downtown Millburn. These include a number of programs where we bring students to the theater, offer classes, a professional training program, programs for people with various disabilities, and so on. Our plans are to eventually expand further into the downtown core by creating an education center that will be a complement to our activities on the main campus.
You may have mentioned it, but you're a not-for-profit.
We are a nonprofit, yes.
Okay. And you raised quite a bit of money in grants.
Yes. Like I said, our budget is around $30 million, and we raised approximately $5 million a year in contributions.
Okay. You have some programs like Adopt a School. Can you talk about those and how they work?
Sure. Like I said, we have a number of different education programs. The Adopt a School program is a partnership with a number of schools, mostly in urban areas, where it's a 4-year contract where we both go into the schools with teaching artists to educate the students around various elements of the theater and bring them to the theater as well over that 4-year period. One of our most significant education programs is the Summer Conservatory, which is about to kick off, which is a professional training program where we audition students who might participate for a great number of years, starting at the age of 7 or 8 up until 18 or 19. Many of them go on to careers in the theater. Some folks like Anne Hathaway, Laura Benanti, and others have participated in our education programs and gone on to great acclaim. We have other programs such as just the theater classes that we offer downtown at the education studios, a whole variety of programs for children of all ages and abilities.
And does there continue to be strong demand for these sorts of programs?
Yes, it's always growing.
Okay. Just by way of background, you've done some studies on the economic impact of
Yes.
paper mill in the Millburn community. Could you give us a brief summary of those?
In 2021, in anticipation of doing a major capital campaign in this building project, we contracted with a company called eConsult, which does economic impact surveys. They're based in Philadelphia, and had them look at all of our data from patrons, number of people that work at paper mill, the number of people come through our doors, and through their methodology came up with an economic impact of about $36 million to the local economy, Millburn and surrounding area, $65 million to the state in both direct spending, indirect spending, and induced spending, which is the money that is generated by the patrons who come here in the local, to the local restaurants and so on.
You obviously provide employment opportunities for the artists and all the support staff. Can you talk about that for a second?
We do. We're a large organization, and every year we issue over 500 1099s and W-2s. So we have a great number of people on our staff, at the restaurant, front of house, and a great number of artists that pass through our doors every year.
Administrative staff, performers, that's included all.
All of the above. We probably have 600 or 700 people altogether that work a season at Paper Mill.
Okay, let's turn to the project now. How did it come to pass? What was the evolution and the thinking behind what you're presenting to the board and the community tonight?
Well, as you stated earlier, the buildings are old. A fire destroyed much of the theater in 1980, and it was rebuilt at that time. And with the exception of the auditorium, which was upgraded in 2018, if you've been there recently, you will have seen the beautiful upgrades that we've done there. Not much of the building has been touched since then. It's obsolete. There's a tremendous amount of wear and tear. It's inaccessible to people with disabilities. It has just dated bathrooms. The way it was designed was, especially the front of house spaces, it wasn't built to accommodate the size of the audience that we have. So you have got tremendous congestion in the lobbies, everything sort of converging at one point where you have the bathroom lineups going into the concession lineups while everyone else is trying to go into the theater. In 2013, before I got hired, the board and the staff at that time started talking about the renovations that were needed to really have Paper Mill become the theater of the 21st century that it needs to be, that it would have to have all of these upgrades to be competitive with our peers in the industry, and it would need to take care of all of the issues with the building that have either been problematic because of deferred maintenance or because they were just poorly designed. So the renovations that we're about to embark on include everything from the circulation areas that need to be improved to just fixing up the back of house areas, which are the oldest parts of the building, to new HVAC, plumbing, electrical, all of the things that will help us to be a much more competitive organization for the future.
So the vast majority is not really a site plan type of issue here, where not the building expansion, but it has all those other things to upgrade the physical plan.
Yeah, we've looked at pretty much every element in terms of what needs to get done, and it is a lot of site plan, the campus. It is the carriage house. The front of house is our biggest problem right now, meaning the entrance to the theater and where the bathrooms, lobbies, and concession areas are, and how the back of the building is not connected to the front of the building. So just as some history, Paper Mill was actually 4 buildings that were sort of built onto each other over time, with the bulk of them happening in 1980 after the fire, and then one that was sort of tacked on after that, where some of our offices are located in the back. It's a rabbit warren of offices, most of which are just out of date, and we have small staircases that go everywhere, creating it almost impossible for anyone with any kind of a physical disability to get from one end of the building to the next. And so this renovation will put us on 2 levels essentially, and allow for people in a wheelchair or with another accessibility issue to be able to get from the back of the building to the front.
Okay, and then 2019, you sort of kicked into a higher gear with some new members in fundraising. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so in
a little bit?
2013, the board and the staff at that time started the planning for this. And it was determined that at that time, the company probably couldn't raise the amount of money that was going to be required to do the renovations that were being considered. So over subsequent years, they really looked inward. They built up the board. In 2019, that's when I started with the organization. We've continued to work on our fundraising. We're now raising a considerable amount of money every year. We've added new board members. We have brought on a tremendous amount of new staff. The pandemic kind of got in the way of our growth plans, but it was during the pandemic that we decided we really need to take this time to do this planning. And so while we were at home, we came up with the architectural plans. We were trying to move everything forward so that when the doors reopened at the theater, we could start in earnest the fundraising and the rest of the process that we needed to go through to complete this project.
Okay, we talked about the back of the house and the dressing rooms. Can you talk a little bit about the carriage house and what the vision is for that and how it fits into the overall campus?
Sure. Our original plans did not include anything in the carriage house. It was really about just fixing the main theater building. But a year and a half ago, this opportunity arose for us where the property next door, immediately next door, 20 Brookside, became available. It was privately owned, and the woman who owned the property operated it as a parking lot for Paper Mill. It came on the market and we bought it, and it opened up an opportunity for us to think about what the gateway to the Paper Mill campus could be. Up until that moment, when you were coming up Brookside Drive to Paper Mill, you saw this little old white house that had nothing really to do with anything that was behind it. We've since taken that down, and what we intend to do is relocate the facade of the theater on the south end of the carriage house, creating what we think is a beautiful gateway to our entire campus. And so the carriage house became a major part of our planning about a year and a half ago, where we decided, if we purchase this property, we can also then be able to double the size of the restaurant, increase the capacity, get a function room on the second floor, which we currently don't have. And it became a very focused part of our project.
So talk about some of the things that the community has said about the usage of the carriage house and how you think you might change the usage a little bit.
Sure. So in the 1990s, when it was converted into a restaurant, prior to then, originally, if we go way back, the carriage house was a residence for a patron of the theater who really sponsored the organization back in the 1930s. It was her residence, the old part of the carriage house. In the 90s, it was decided that it would make a nice restaurant. And so at that time, we put into place, or the company put into place, everything that it would need, the liquor license and so on, for use of the carriage house. During the pandemic, the first thing that we were able to reopen in the summer of 2020 was the carriage house for outdoor dining, takeout dining, and performance. We created a 100-seat restaurant on the Brookside and did cabaret performances in the open air. And it was one way that we just stayed alive during that period of time. And our audience was thoroughly engaged with it. When we all went back to work, we continued that, but also decided, the carriage house is an opportunity for us to offer programming on a more regular basis. So traditionally, it's just been an amenity to our patrons who are coming to the theater. They buy dinner, they have dinner, they go into the theater, then they leave. On dark nights, we have 2 or 3 weeks in between shows. Nothing was going on there. And so we've started doing murder mysteries and trivia nights and cabaret and a variety of other events. And we've found ways to keep it occupied. And the audience is loving it. And one of the things that the township brought to us when we were negotiating the financial package was that they wanted to see more return from paper mill in a few different ways. One, more opportunities for students at the middle and high school with paper mill, which we're now working on. Ticket opportunities for people in town who might not be able to afford a ticket to paper mill, trying to come up with ways to make it affordable for them. And expanded use of the Carriage House, whether it was for additional lecture series or performance nights or rentals. They were looking at it as an asset that was tremendously underutilized. So it certainly plays into our business plan of trying to maximize and optimize the use of that space as much as possible.
So you heard during the public meetings and from
Yes.
the governing body, how can you reposition Carriage House?
Yes,
so to
exactly.
speak?
There was a lot of interest in just activating the entire space more nights of the year, including the main theater. But the main theater is probably lit as much as it can be because of what goes on in between shows, is the preparation or the strike of the show that has just been in there. And that can be a 2 to 3 or 4 week process, depending on the show that's leaving or coming in. So one of our compromise solutions to them was to be able to expand the programming in the Carriage House and try to keep the Carriage House lit as many nights a year as possible.
Okay. This is going to relate later to the parking, but let's talk about how the Carriage House is going to be. So when you have a show going on, the Carriage House is essentially going to be used for diners. People are going to come and then they're going to go to it.
Correct.
They're going to go
It's
to
the
the
same
show.
audience.
Same group.
It's the same, yeah.
Okay. Then the theater is going to be, so that's the busiest. That's sort of the peak. Fair to say.
Absolutely, yes.
That's the,
Yeah.
and it's the use is really with some expanded seating, but similar today.
Yes, absolutely. We sell at the restaurant most nights with people that are going in to see a show.
Okay. So if the board does approve, it gets built, you'll have some expanded seating, but you don't expect more parking demand because it's just going to be more ticket holders using the Carriage House. They're still coming to the campus in the area anyway.
That's correct. The capacity of the theater is not changing. We have 1,150 seats. We can serve around 80 people for dinner, and we're going to be able to serve 160 of those people that are going to the theater instead of just 80.
Okay, so you're not expecting on nights when the theater is with a show, you're not expecting overall more people. You may get more people in the Carriage House because you have more seating. If you can, you'll be competing with what's going on around.
Right, but we're not going to be operating it as a restaurant for people that are not attending a show.
Okay.
That is not part of the deal.
Okay.
On dark nights, yes, the restaurant will be open, but it'll have a much smaller capacity. We have plenty of parking for those events.
That's what I was trying to get
We
at.
have plenty of parking for those.
Perhaps in
events.
our
Yes.
building. So when the theater is dark, you're anticipating some additional types of events at a renovated Carriage House. But of course, there's plenty of parking because you don't have the 1,100 theater goers that night. Okay. Could you just talk a little bit about the intended construction schedule to give the board a little feel for that?
Yes, it's a very complex project and will be done over a 3 to 4 year period, starting this summer. The overall project includes what we call the back of house renovation, which is not before you today, but it's the first part that we're dealing with. It's interior work that needs to be done on the back of house, which are the dressing rooms, offices, restrooms for staff, and so on. It's all interior work, nothing going on outside. And we're not taking down walls. It's mostly about refurbishment. Back of house is starting this summer. The second phase is the Carriage House. Our intent is to start and finish it next summer. It is key to do that part of the renovation next summer so that the following summer, June, July of 25, for a 14-month period, we will then be doing the front of house renovation, which is the most significant part of the renovation. It involves demolishing the entire front of house and creating a temporary lobby, restroom facilities, and so on for the patrons that will still be coming to the theater while we're doing the construction. It is our intent to do the work while we are in construction, which is why it's a 14-month period. We've been working on a plan for how to deal with egress and a whole variety of other issues that will come up by doing the construction at that time. We determined that we cannot close the theater for a period of time to do the renovation, which might be the more economical thing to do over a shorter period of time. But having gone through the pandemic and lost a substantial number of our audiences, we don't want to take the risk. And so we're now looking at how we will operate during that year when we're doing that. But the carriage house is kind of key to being done before, as it will not only function as a restaurant, but provide support services for some of our staff while we're doing the main part of the renovation of the front of house.
A complicated project.
It's an extremely complicated project.
There's been some fundraising. Can you touch on
Yes.
that?
It is all in right now, $43 million project. We're close to $30 million in funds raised for the project, a combination of public and private support. So we've got individual donors who have pledged close to $20 million. We have some state support, and then the township recently made a financial commitment of $7 million to take care of very specifically the purchase of 20 Brookside, so that all of the property is contiguously owned by the township, fixing the retaining walls along the river and the back parking lots, which both have issues and have not been well maintained. Part of it's just because of wear and tear. Underground water, because there is underground water everywhere around here, and we found a solution for fixing it right below the theater. And then relocating the facade. During our conversations with the Historic Preservation Committee over the last year and a half, it was very important to them that we retain certain elements of the design of the current facility. They wanted it to reflect a mill and pay homage in a way that honored the past of the site. And they wanted us to retain the facade. So if you will, it looks like we have essentially pulled the facade off the existing building and put it onto the carriage house. Like I said earlier, creating this gateway. But the cost of rebuilding that wall, and our intention is to do it, replicate it as closely as possible. We won't be moving the wall, but rebuilding it, replicating it as much as possible. And so the township support will help cover that cost as well.
Okay, let's just come back if we can a little bit to that 1992 resolution.
Yes.
Yeah, you were surprised to see those conditions in
Yeah.
there. And,
well, I had no idea it existed,
Okay.
and nor did anyone currently working in the carriage house or working at the theater. It had not been sort of a rule passed down, if you will. And so learning that there was a capacity limitation, hours limitation was a complete surprise. And so what our hope is that our current practice and what our intended use of the carriage house, once the renovations are complete, will dictate the capacity, the use, and the hours of the restaurant.
Okay, so essentially, you'd like to be able to use the carriage house when the theater is dark for events that are going to be lower in intensity than when the theater and carriage house are operating together.
Right.
So it's not a peak issue, but to leverage that asset, as you heard from the township committee and in other community forums. And the board is obviously aware that that's part of our request tonight. We talked a little bit about the parking. We're losing 10 spaces. We are adding a demand for approximately 32 spaces because we're increasing the seating in the restaurant overall. But could you just address, do you see there being an increased demand at the peak, or a different sort of structure? Do you see a problem?
I don't see the demand for parking increasing because of what we're doing with the Carriage House restaurant.
Okay.
Because most of the people, 99.9% of the people coming to the Carrot House, the night we have a performance, which is when we have the most number of cars in the lot, is not fundamentally going to change. They're coming to see the show.
Okay, I'm just sort of repeating that point
Yes.
to cover it. Okay. Loading space, we're going to be seeking relief for not having a formal loading space. You obviously have loading, but it occurs on off hours. Do you have any need for a formal loading area?
We don't. We have a loading dock for theatrical use, which is not going to change, at the rear of the theater. For the restaurant, they either go into the circular drive that is currently existing, that goes away, but we replace it with the longer indent that you see there. Or they back in to Lot A, which is in behind the theater, and walk to the Carrot House. I don't foresee a need for a specific loading area for the restaurant because as you just said, all of the deliveries come when we're not in performance. So there's no activity really going on.
Okay, and I think we covered your discussions and what you did with the HPC in town to do that. Any further comment on that?
No, we've been in discussions with them over the last year and a half, listened to what their concerns have been. I think we've honored what their wishes are. We're all very pleased with what this design is. I will mention that we started with a design that was very contemporary, not anything that you're looking at right now, and realized through our conversations with them that we should be thinking much more about the history of the property from an architectural point of view. And so we sent KSS Architects back to the drawing board, and they came up with this solution, which accomplishes a number of things that we were trying to do, creating the gateway, retaining the wall, redesigning the main lobby so that it has the mill figure. You're not seeing, you will see later from our architect some other angles and views of this, so you can see the mill and how it's incorporated. And also from the inside the lobby, what we want to try to do is create this relationship with the outdoors, so that we're in a beautiful setting, and to have our audience inside be able to see what's outdoors and vice versa. That's great for theaters. It's great for creating excitement and attention to a site when you can actually see the activity that's going on inside that building. And I think that this design helps us to do that.
Mike, anything else on your end?
Not right now.
Okay, we reserve our rights, Chairman. That's our
Yeah.
introduction to give you all
Any
flavor.
questions from the audience regarding comments that have been made? Please come forward
We have to go on.
and identify yourself.
Yes, my name is Patricia.
When you get to the
Wolf. I'm
microphone.
married to Ed.
Wait. Come up to the microphone and then.
Sorry. My name is Patricia Wolf. I'm married to Ed Galley. Been living across the street from the paper mill for over 30 years, as my neighbor here, Sorrel, is. We're here with concerns about.
Questions you have. for the
Questions,
testimony.
questions. I'm confused about where people are going to, are you moving the entrance of the theater more towards the parking lot?
No. The entrance to the theater stays right where it is,
Oh, okay, okay.
but with a ramp that now makes it possible
Uh-huh.
for wheelchairs to be able to get
And
in.
that's the carriage house.
And this is the carriage house.
Okay, thank you.
Any
When
other
we,
questions?
when we meet next week,
Okay.
I can explain all of this.
Okay.
in more
Any
detail.
other questions?
Yes.
Please come forward, identify yourself and your
Sure,
address.
I'm Sorrel Reef. I live in
Just spell your name.
Surelle, last name REE, 2 Fs, Frank.
And
And
your address.
I live at 9 Brookside Drive. And
Your question for.
my question is, we're very happy that you're renovating and doing these updates. But since our houses are from theirs, 1852, according to records, and mine, like a little later, 1870 something to 1881. They were mill houses. They were part of the history of the paper mill. And even though they were over 100-something years, they have gone many changes. They're still historically very pertinent to the town. But because they're so close, my question is, how will all this ruckus, how will the construction, the debris, it's a very busy street. And we already have a lot of impact from the cars, which is not anything.
So your question is, how will the debris affect?
How will the debris, the sound, which there's a lot of sound, the lighting choice,
Okay,
the lighting choices.
well, we will probably, Mr. Skolnick will be getting into that. So
Okay.
to the best of your ability, if you're able to answer that question.
Yes. I mean, we're very aware that not only are you neighbors, but we have neighbors on the other
On
side of the
Glen, yes.
river as well. And we're gonna have to work with our construction manager to make sure that we cause as little disturbance as possible. But it is going to be a construction site. There is going to be demolition, there is going to be sound from that. We will be very cognizant of, late nights and so on and so forth. We don't want to do anything that's going to disrupt the neighbors in terms of, keeping them up all night. It will be well coordinated, and as we get closer and closer to that part of the renovation, which is 2 years away, we will come up with much more detailed plans. I don't have detailed plans for you right now about what our schedule is going to be. Right now, we're doing the back of house, which is not going to disturb you at all. And the carriage house should cause a little disturbance to you next year, even though it's going to be construction, but it's a relatively small project.
Okay, we realize that. The other question, I guess I have to not
Ask
just,
you one of the questions at this point.
just more in questions. So things that maybe would increase, like buses that have been along, I wonder if any of those alterations, like buses that spew a lot of additional debris, because we're so close, that I'm wondering if maybe the bus locations where they not let the people on and off, but if buses might do that elsewhere, because sometimes they idle for the whole show when it's cold out or whatever. So my question is, would that be a consideration? Like
Our
buses?
plans don't include anything other than the redesign of the drop-off for additional bus parking. We're not doing anything to the parking lots beyond paving, eventually lighting and signage, but there's not going to be any kind of accommodation within the existing lots for buses. I don't think there's going to be an increase in buses, but I understand your point about fumes and all of that. I don't know, we can have a further conversation, I think.
Sure.
But I don't know how this project I don't think it'll impact that any greater, and it shouldn't make it any worse,
Well, let me just ask you this last question is, would you be able to give us a heads up about what's happening and when it's happening, so we can prepare? Because it would be hard to get down the street and
Yes.
that kind of thing.
When we meet next week, we can talk through all of the details of what
Okay, that sounds
you're
good.
gonna need to know.
Okay, and we could have an ongoing dialogue with these. Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
Thank you.
Jeffrey Feld, 11 Alexander Lane. I've been to various meetings and hearing your questionings. What is the urgency of this current application? You just testified that the first part is the back of the house. That doesn't really require the zoning board's approval. The reason I raise this is we talk about the lease that came out in 2008. To the best of my knowledge, that lease has not been amended by the local governing body. Is that true?
That's correct.
Right. Nor has the local governing body approved the acquisition of the parking lot yet.
That's in process.
The question is, it's not in process, have they introduced an ordinance yet to acquire that
We
property?
believe they have. On April 2nd, there was a bond ordinance that
That's
authorized.
Were you at the meeting?
No.
All right. Do you know, is it true that the BA,
Here's what I would say, Mr. Feld, is the intention of the bond ordinance is to cover the cost of acquiring that property. It was part of the negotiations. The urgency of what we're trying to do here is we need to be able to move forward with all of our planning, right? And authorize the architects to go to the next level of design. Right now, these are schematics. Given the complexity of this project and the scope and scale of it, and the fact that we're still actively trying to raise $10 million for its completion, we need to make sure that we have the rights and all of the approvals, the variances that are required, any new ordinance that needs to be passed for the capacity of the carriage house, so that we can go to the funding community and say, Milburn has supported what we're doing here. We've got the approvals. Where this is what our time frame is. This is how capital campaigns work and how capital projects work. You need all of these things in line. So even though we're not starting construction for 2 years, there's a lot of stuff we need to know is going to be in place
Well,
so that we can actively.
You're
go at
asking this
rates.
board to approve something based on a lease agreement that has not been amended. You're asking them to start approving stuff based on an acquisition that has not been approved. Tonight, folks, was the first time I heard the breakout of the $5.3 million.
Let's keep the questions.
All right.
Wait, so,
But,
let me sort of cut to the chase here. Are you questioning, Mr. Feld, the issue of standing for this applicant to present this application?
No, I don't think I went that far, but,
Right. so
but I
the-
bring,
well, in fairness, that's why I'm asking you the question. Because if they have standing to present the application under the municipal land use law, they are permitted to file an application. And we have very general standing rules in the state of New Jersey.
I agree with you.
Go ahead. So.
No, I'm just saying.
Want to try to focus.
I'm just saying, earlier, when we had another application with St. Rose, we had two parts of that application. You had the owner, that being the church, and you had the actual applicant at that time, which was the contracting business. And there was a real distinction because you had two different attorneys representing two different interests. Tonight, we only have one person remember, two people signed the application, two parties signed the application to this board. One being the paper mill, the other one being the Township of Milburn. And I don't see anyone here testifying on behalf of the Township of Milburn, but it's 20 after, and I think this application is going to be carried. But there are questions I think they need to be part of the record.
Thank you. Any other questions regarding the testimony? So far? Who would you like to go here?
We're going to call Don Kim, the next witness.
Oh, did anyone have any questions? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I have a question. Just, I'm the liaison to the HPC from zoning, and, you know, a lot of this is new to me. I was just wondering, like, I mean, you said these talks have been occurring for
About a year and a half.
About a year and a half?
Yes.
Has the HPC written any report or
No,
anything?
I haven't seen any kind of report. These were conversations that we had with Allison Cantwell and Barton Ross, and introduced, you know, what our plans were to them and received some direction from them.
I will just add that a copy of this application was forwarded to Allison Canfield digitally on May 2nd, and a hard copy was put in their mailbox for a report if they so choose to write one.
Okay.
But I did not hear.
Is there going to be another witness to talk about the operation of the carriage house when the theater is not in operation?
I can speak.
We could talk if you feel like you need a little bit more
Well,
on that.
I do. I mean, especially given the fact that we're trying, the applicant is proposing to change or amend conditions in a prior resolution. I think there needs to be, whether it's this witness or another witness, some testimony on the record as to the reasons why, and also what that operation is going to look like for consideration.
We touched on it, but Mike, you want to talk a little more about it?
Sure, I'm happy to right now.
We're going to set, it's in two, Rob. So there's, when the theater is operating, it's going to be pretty similar to what happens now.
Yes.
Except there'll be some additional seating.
Correct.
Restaurant. Okay?
And I'm assuming that because you're going from 80 seats to 160 seats for the restaurant, The, I guess, peak time when people arrive at their peak times, when people arrive at the theater for the show, that's going to be spread out more because you're going to have more people arriving earlier, and therefore there'll correspondingly be less people arriving during that peak.
Fair
So-
statement, would you say? It might smooth out the traffic coming in a little, if,
Well,
say
more people-
40 or
more-
50
More
people.
people will arrive earlier, right,
Right,
for the
I
dinner.
think that's
but,
Rob's point.
Yeah,
It's marginal.
I think it would be marginal because a lot of people, whether they are coming to the carriage house for dinner or going downtown for dinner, many will park and then walk. So I don't see that there's going to be a tremendous amount of change in how the audience comes and goes for the carriage house or even the main stage with any of these renovations. The carriage house will have a larger capacity, but there are a great number of people that are coming downtown for every performance that we do that will go to any number of restaurants downtown as well. So, and they'll park either in our lots or they'll park downtown and walk up to where we are. So I don't fundamentally think any of that will change.
That's when there's a performance. I
Correct.
think Rob wants to have at least a little more clarity. There's these 2 or
Yes,
3 week
when we're not-
periods.
yes, when we're
and-
not performing.
And what type of programming are you, because the restaurant might be open
Yes.
now.
So we're already doing it. And again, sort of, I guess, maybe we shouldn't be, but we are. And it includes, really from an operational point of view, we have one large dining room that seats about 60 people. That's the part of the restaurant that is currently open on non-performance nights. And we're doing murder mysteries, trivia nights, cabaret. We're renting that space out for business meetings, other functions. It's not quite every night that we're dark, but with some frequency. And our goal would be to try to rent it out as much as possible. I want to make one correction in the capacities. Our overall capacity for the building will go up to about 222, I believe. But it's split into 4 different rooms. There are 2 rooms in the oldest part of the carriage house, which we're not really touching because of its historical age. And each of those rooms accommodates about 32 people each. The orange room, the room that's coming down and getting rebuilt, currently has a capacity of it's over 80 when you count the bar. That is what will double downstairs, but there's also a room upstairs that we're adding for an additional 72. We will probably not be serving dinner up there at all times when the other parts of the restaurant are open because of the capacity of the kitchen. We are going to be increasing the size of the kitchen, but not to the point where we could turn over 222 meals a night in one sitting. And that's the other thing about the restaurant is it is one sitting when we are in performance. People arrive at 5:30, show goes up at 7 or 7:30, and then the restaurant closes. Sometimes we do have some people stay after a show, but that's rare because of the parking situation. We don't see a lot of post-show activity. There might be more in the future, and we want to talk about that in terms of the operations. We would like to keep the bar open post-show, in the future. We currently don't do it as a matter of practice. On non-performance nights, the 80-seat room is where we will do the murder mysteries and the cabarets and things like that. We will have the capacity, I suppose, to do 2 different events at that point. You could have something in the 80-seat room and something in the 30-seat room. I can imagine that we might do that, but it's still not going to have an overall impact on parking because those nights we're not going to have main stage performances, so the parking will all be available.
And what about, let's say, seatings? Will you have more than one seating for those, what I'm going to call the off nights when the theater is not
Right.
in performance?
In all likelihood, no. And the reason why is that I can't imagine that we would ever start it as a restaurant with multiple seatings on the start nights. The theater has tried to do that in the past and it's failed because it's inconsistent in terms of what you're conveying to the public. Certain nights, we have a show going, all you can get is the one sitting. What we're doing right now to attract audiences is try to tie the meal to a performing arts event. And that's what makes us different from La Pergola or Basilico or any of the other restaurants, is that you're still coming to Paper Mill for a murder mystery or a cabaret or a jazz artist or a singer, whatever, and the dinner. So it's like a dinner theater kind of combination. And that is what is sort of guiding our decision-making around how to program the carriage shows. So it would only be one seating.
In the event of a private event, would you be able to do it on a night of a show, or is that not an option? Someone wants to.
Only if you're coming to the show.
Correct, but not independently.
Not independently. Yeah.
Any other questions? You hit the magic hour.
I got 1 minute. I can start my next witness.
So, we are gonna come back. Okay. What is, I know you have a sense of urgency here.
It's not mine. It's, you know.
Your client.
Client.
Vis-a-vis you.
We would, yes.
So, when can we bring us back?
Is there any appetite for a special to try to run through the whole thing?
Yeah, so, I would only do a special on a regularly scheduled night. I'm not adding one to the schedule in summertime. I think it'd be a hard time to populate. So if you have an empty night.
I have nothing empty until August 19th.
Yeah.
Well, it's not empty. I have an application on.
But like, it's relatively empty. I mean, that's about as far as I could go, because you know, I would accommodate you, but to add a night with the summertime, I mean, I, as you know, as you've heard, it's populated board. And I don't want to be in a bad spot where I already have to have one board member get up to date.
Was that the first night that we had? Was our July night? No.
I didn't even have room for St. Rose on July 1st.
That'll be 5 minutes.
Yeah. I have 5 applications on for the 15th. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for August 5th.
I'm away on the 5th, just full disclosure.
And
just
the
'cause I'm away.
19th, the 2 are both gonna be out. I know that. So we'll have, hopefully, the other 7 will be here
I'm away the 19th,
on August 19th.
Jessica's out.
Okay. Okay, we might want to tell the other people not to come.
Who else is out on the 19th? Both of you are out?
They're both out.
You're out, Derek?
I'm out the entire.
Okay.
And you're out August 5th as well,
The
correct?
entire August.
Yes, both August.
Okay. And when are you, Priscilla, you around or no?
You're at 15th of July and the 19th of August.
So how many are we down on August
Well, like I
19th?
said, I don't know Regina's schedule. But right now on the 19th of August, you're down at least
Down
2.
to Yeah, you're down 3.
Down 3, sorry.
Down 3.
So, you're short 1 then, 1 vote. I mean, I kind of knew this was gonna be like this.
Can we carry to a short date, tell the folks and see if there's another date or you're not?
I'm
You don't have
I'm
enough.
all for that.
I don't know that we can accomplish it,
No.
but we only have a few members of the public here. Most of them are with our team, so there's a lot of, I think we'd be willing to try if we can find. Chairman, I don't want to tell you what to do because it's your board and the summer is difficult. If we can find another Monday night.
I can't do that, because number 1, we're not gonna have the notice for it.
August 5th. Like, that's the most I can do.
I'm sorry?
I can put them on for August 5th.
I'm not here on the 5th.
That's right, you're not here, then I'm down to the.
So, like I said, even please get a special,
I try, well, I'm highly familiar with the operations of boards of adjustment
July 1st.
in the summer. July 1st.
I know you're away, so like.
No, you have a full month, don't you? You have a-
No, I'm.
You have a full,
Just.
you have a, thank you. Yeah. July 1st, the board members are not gonna show up.
You could even get a witness or 2 in on that August date and then finish up
want to
on
try.
a subsequent date where you likely have more board members and people can catch up.
Okay, so why don't you put us down for August 19th?
Let's do that.
We'll see if for some reason a night comes up, I'll renotice to get us on. In the scheme of the project, we can renotice. So folks, the chairman will explain it. We're going to be August 19th. There's not going to be any more notice. It's a long shot, but if it's a different date, you'll get another certified notice, but check with Eileen also. But most likely August 19th is going to be the date. And you can check with Eileen every day. Just send her an email, maybe she'll respond if you get lucky.
Maybe she responds.
Anything not so nice.
Okay. But we'll let you know if it's a different date. Okay, but check before to make sure we're going for it. It's highly unlikely there'll be another date, but that's the best we
So
can do.
Mr. Skolnick was kind enough to do what I normally do, so as he mentioned, keep an eye out on that. We'll move this to August 17th with no further notice. We'll just take it from there.
And we have a chunk of that night.
We
No.
Sean, please.
We don't.
Well, actually, because the other application, we're gonna be down 3 people that night. The other application is use variance as well, so.
How many has so far scheduled? This one and one other?
Yeah, the other one, and that, just so there's just the 2.
All right, so you're gonna get.
So we'll have a good chunk.
Yeah.
Okay, hope for that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions regarding anything else on the agenda this evening?
So we'll meet with you.
I see none. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Second. All in favor? Good evening.
I got a compliment from Mr. Fell. My wife